and the first point is maybe not. Yeah, just give me a sec. I will connect. Yeah, let's all go to the pad. We are, I guess, on with Mumble and Stream, right? Gorgeous. Okay, so the address of the pad. Yep.
Alexander,
Okay, I'll finish it later.
Open Auftrag schon mal in Betrieb oder existiert das so?
Ich bin nicht verantwortlich für den Text. Also tatsächlich ist der Text teilweise schlecht. Aber Open Antrag ist ein Projekt, was auch in Betrieb ist in Deutschland.
Ja, so man kann das im Prinzip schon benutzen.
Ja, also
erstmal googeln
ja.
und dann fragen, ja.
Erstmal googeln und dann fragen. Muss jetzt
Openantrag.de. Your connection is not secure. What the
yes,
fuck?
of course, what the fuck, ja, also
Expired certificate. Mensch.
Mensch, genau. Das ist aber eine gute Frage.
Nee.
Ich weiß nicht, wie weit das jetzt noch gepflegt wird. Also wir hatten das in der Berliner Piratenfraktion ja mal abgelehnt, das zu benutzen, weil es eben nicht unseren Programmierstandards entspricht.
Ach so.
Aber
ja.
Es ist also generell die Idee ist natürlich gut, ja. Wobei das kannst du auch. Also, ich weiß nicht, ob du da also ein Tool brauchst. Oder man kann
sowas
genau.
In dem Wahlkampf für die Parlamentswahl versprochen und sollten im Prinzip
for example, Magnus is already here, or
Vielleicht
the
kann
back
man,
is someone else's.
ein europäisches Tool.
Magnus.
Magnus. I have no idea what is Magnus.
Okay. Thank you. I was just like, there's some bags, so I was wondering if we should
was komisch wäre, wenn wir dafür bezahlen und sowas schon existiert.
Yesterday because it was said that it was secure. So maybe he left.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, because we left stuff here. The laptops, bags.
Ah, yeah.
Das wäre ja toll, aber bei den openantrag.de ist Service unavailable.
Ich werde dann nochmal nachfragen.
Ja, aber
also mein Vorschlag wäre, dass man so ein Tool für die DPIO macht und das können dann alle Piraten in Europa benutzen. Also auch gleich in verschiedenen Sprachen.
Das wäre toll. Ja, gibt es vielleicht etwas am GitHub, um den Code zu sehen?
Das könnte sein. Ich habe das tatsächlich.
I don't know if Muriel told you about some proposal they wanted to make yesterday.
About what? Sorry?
About a proposal.
About sowieso
program.
Yeah. I just don't know where to put it in the agenda yet, but yeah. Well, we can discuss something within the taxes, right? Because
the code is nicht.
Yeah.
Actually, it has to do with financial sector.
Benutzen wir das, aber
yeah, for us, it's like the only part.
There was also some comment also on patents. Do you discuss patents?
Well, actually, we didn't. Well, there is something in the old program, I think, and we can maybe broaden it, but we need some, text on which we can see and work on, or something like that. But you can.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. But you can definitely tell us in the old CEEP part that we will be discussing something more, and we all decide whether to forward.
Yeah, it's not necessarily to discuss it today, but just to consider it as a.
Wir haben das,
Yeah, well,
also das
we're tight on
ist
schedule, so rather today than
Okay.
because,
als
yeah.
Fraktion gesagt,
The other thing is that
Slowly.
jeder kann bei der
I'm
Verteidigung
waiting
einen
if
Vorschlag
Francois is.
machen.
Did you write everything down?
Und das muss natürlich nochmal.
Okay, thank you. So,
Ja, sondern
Muriel will
weil
come
wir
later, and she says
haben
we
dann
can begin
teilweise
without her.
sehr
So,
merkwürdige
when you two arrived, I guess we can begin now.
Aber die Idee ist, also jeder kann einen Vorschlag machen und die Fraktion bringt den dann ein, wenn er vernünftig ist.
We can begin now.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today again. I officially begin the meeting at 10:17. I suppose again, Anticon and Dario, can you somehow make minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you. So on the request of the French pirates, we will discuss their concerns and proposals in first half an hour, but let's keep it as brief as possible because we have a lot of work in front of us today. But I think it's important to deal with your concerns, so let's go for it. Okay, so Francois already wrote something into the pad. Do you want to briefly summarize for everyone who doesn't want to read it? Just briefly, 3 points.
So basically, we're talking a lot about transparency and participation. Okay. So we're thinking that maybe we can apply this to ourselves even more than we do now. We think it goes through different things, like tools on one side, but also to having a clear process of decision. Okay. So it can be having a clear calendar for the next year. It can be how do we vote on points? Do we vote on points? If we do it, to be sure that every pirates can verify that their representatives can see what they vote for. Every pirates should have able very easily what happened in these meetings. And I think okay, numbers and pads are fine, but it's a long way for simple pirates to know the way through it. I think. Don't think so.
Well, maybe can I add something immediately, because this point is for me, the most that I don't really understand it, because other concerns I actually completely understand, even though it's a question how to deal with it. But this actually not like I think that Mumble and pads are really simple and really easy to use, and like you need just 2 minutes with a person to explain it to them, I think, in my opinion. And whatever other systems or tools or stuff like that you can have, still it's probably your French systems, and we all the others would have to learn how to deal with it. So it would actually take time for us and some energy and some know-how and stuff like that. For example, I had to specifically ask Antigone for instructions for discourse because I absolutely didn't get it. And it's just like Mumble and pads, we are using it for years and years. So
And he doesn't either. So
like the movement as a whole, so I think it's something we are all used to, and those who aren't should somehow respect that everyone else uses it. And it's just, my point is that we will have to learn either way. It's not like all of us know some tool. Well, all of us know Facebook, as apart from Marcel, but but you see, even Marcel would have to learn how to use Facebook groups or something like that.
I would do it otherwise.
Yeah, it's a compliment. So yeah.
In fact, one of our problems is the pads, the pad addresses are not really public in our console. For multiple purposes, they are not protected, and we have issues with former pirates that are going, we can say it's crazy, and they are throwing all the pads that are publicly and it's very easy to mess with them and to put some false information. We had some issues in this kind of tools because of the mimic of the color mimic and saying some bad sentences. This is one of our concern. We don't have, in fact, with this kind of tools, the ability to go further in our low construction system. In fact, for example, when we use Congressors, it's effectively our tool. We can construct on low basis our system, our program, and you can see who, when, where the propositions are made. We understand for now, for the tools problem, that's not the time. The main question here now is about the time process we saw yesterday or on the days before that we have some rounds of discussion and decision and discussion and decision. We need to know, in fact, the dates when we will stop in this process, when we will agree together about the program, how it will be decided, on which basis. It's on the work, it's the work program of each point. We will search the common minimal program for how it will be applied to a country and so on. And this is for French pirates. This is not clear at all.
Yeah, some kind of schedule. Also, okay, Marcel was first, and then I don't know, Alex Mikuláš.
Yeah. I have no idea what this course is. I have never seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one used
I
it.
also have a concern with the Etherpad using for this, maybe for different reasons. But the reason actually is, well, it's connected to that. Everyone who knows the URL can do anything in the pad, but most importantly, they can read the information. And as much as I am all for transparency, this is our pirate party internal discussion, and I do not think that it should leak anywhere else outside the pirate party world, because it's our preparation for the battle, and no one from our let's say competitors should be able to look into what we discussed here and then possibly use that information against us. Because this forum should be open and no one should be afraid to say anything.
You know we are on a stream, public.
Yep. I'm raising my concern.
Okay, yeah. It's just about the pad.
Okay, then it's not about the pad, but I'm raising my concern that this is an internal meeting. No one should be afraid to say anything. And once you have the possibility that anything you say or anyone else says may be used in, let's say, the campaign transparency here, then well, I don't think it's the right way how to approach this.
Alex, then Mikuláš.
Many things, yes, this transparency. What is internal, what is not internal. Of course, we have a stream, and I personally like concept of transparency in the Pirate Party. So in the fraction, the Berlin House of Representatives, we have recorded every meeting of the fractions, and it's online, and this was really an advantage, especially from Berlin journalists. I've heard, oh, it was so comfortable, they can hearing the stream and having to go and catch information. But also in this fraction meetings, it was not so really interesting, and because we made decisions, yes, but often we have not long discussions, because the discussions were made before in the in our working groups and so on. But that, I mean, what should be transparent are decisions, yes, and it's not necessary that all discussions and also internal things should be transparent. Yes. So we have to be careful what we are doing, and what we are not doing here is to think about strategy, how we can meet our other parties. But we spoke about the common election program, and that should be public. And I was really also all meetings we have had before with European Pirates. I'm really happy that we have consensus about 80% of the topic. Yes. And okay, there are points which are not consensus, but this could be discussed. Yes. And in the Common European Election Program, of course, only the topics which are consensus should be in. And for that, of course, we have different procedures. I think, because we have 2 rounds now, and perhaps we can make a timetable, because the working groups have to meet after this discussion, and I think that next meetings of the working groups should be working out something like a final text proposal, and then we have to discuss this final text proposal. And for the decision in this time, I think perhaps when we have a big working group said, okay, this should be the final text proposal, we should give all member parties the possibility to take a veto on some points. This should be discussed, because the last time we had made a final proposal, we made it in Athens, perhaps somebody remember this meeting, and then we give it to the member parties that, okay, you can say yes or no. Perhaps this is a little bit too weak, but we have to think about how this procedure should be.
Okay. Mikuláš?
Yeah. Okay, if I may first comment on the request of let's say security of the meetings. We have no way how to control whether the people participating on the meetings are members of pirate parties. Simply, there is no central register which would no evidence of all pirate party members in Europe. Different parties have different registers. There are different approaches how to administrate it. Until now, no one somehow connected it. And that's an important task for future, because if we want anything like whatsoever, like direct democracy tool for all the members of pirate parties in Europe, or any discussion platform or anything like that, we will have, first of all need some authorization to do this. But it's not done, and it's not easy to deploy it, because you will have to interconnect the member parties databases. That's for first. So this is technical reason why we cannot restrict this meeting only for our internal purposes, and that's why it has to be open to everyone. And this is the way how actually the Mumble works, and anyone can connect here and anyone can record it. Whatever you say here could be recorded. Just take it as a fact. Secondly, about the process, how to deal with the program, I think the general idea is that we are meeting here as volunteers who will provide some text which you can present as a party, as a marketing tool for the election, claiming it's a common European election program of pirate parties. That's it. Take it or leave it. This is the way how it will work. It's because there is no authority which could like order French Pirate Party or any other pirate party to take it and present it as its election program. What is from my perspective, let's say, best solution how to somehow legalize, and maybe you would not agree with me. Maybe there should be a vote of either PPEU board or PPEU council. This is the text we provide to the member parties, but it's, in my opinion, actually not really necessary. It's a possibility, but it's not necessary.
Okay. Any reactions?
No,
Antigone, sorry.
I can just reply that no, of course not. It doesn't have to be a vote on anything really. If we agree that this is the text that we want to provide to our member parties, that's totally okay. And then, of course, it's always up to each and every party to decide, is this the text that we want to use or not? And also, do we want to use all of it or parts of it? Depending on context, of course, because there are different contexts for every member. So we can't really force anything. We don't have any agreement saying that we can force anything. So yeah, this is just building a platform that we can say this is a good help for the PPEU or the EU elections next year, and hopefully we will do such a good work that no one says that this is rubbish, we're going to do our own platform, but rather say that okay, this is good enough, we can tweak it perhaps in some questions, and from that we hopefully can say that okay, this is the program that we are presenting as a European-wide platform.
Do you want a reaction?
Maybe just add.
Then Antigone, Cedric, Marcel.
So yeah, that's the idea. And for example, in Czech Pirate Party, we have a plan that after this election program is finished, we will do some research on the top, what are the voters actually interested in, and we will somehow take those parts which are most reflecting the people's concern, and those will be pointed out in the final strategy. So this is definitely, there is like nothing really forces you to put exactly this text on your web page. You can take some parts and say, well, there is some link on the European Pirate Party website if you want to see it all, but what is important for your party, then just point out and use it to win the election.
Antigone?
Maybe just on the last point for maybe an improvement through the PPU board or PPU council. I'm not sure it's a good idea, because in the first discussion about the PPU, it was really an important point for the national parties that the PPU will not have a program. So if we make it decided by the board, then it can be easy understood as a program of the PPAU, so I will be careful about that and let the national party decide for themselves.
Cedric?
In fact, for the board of the French Pirates, there is maybe a misconception about PPAU, the main meaning of it, and we want, in fact, to know, in fact, if the PPAU is a real political party or just a think tank, and if it's just a tool. We don't understand why the PPAU doesn't provide tools for construction and so on. And we all agree, in fact, that we can't force all pirates to agree and to enforce the discussion here to be put in place in their country. This is a fact, and we agree on that. But we need to know, in fact, how we will work as a whole team. Because if you agree on 80–70% of the program, we need, in fact, to know why in your country you disagree. Because, and it's something that I wanted to say yesterday that I forgot or I can't say it. We have a problem in Europe. In fact, each country is not an enemy, but a competitor inside the Europe. And as you see, the President Trump saying that all the Europe is an enemy of United States, America, we can't afford to make war inside our countries in Europe. So we need to understand why some points are rejected in each country, and we need to know, in fact, as I said, how to work together. And we want, in fact, in France, a strong PPAU according to each country, not to enforce, but to work together.
Marcel, Francois, and maybe me.
Yeah,
we have 10 minutes,
so the discussion ran in too many directions, I think. I just want to say I don't want to restrict anyone from participating. Right, that was not point of my comment here. In my understanding, the PPEU kind of facilitates building the program, and it's probably unnecessary that the board actually votes on the program itself, because PPEU is only the facilitator of this whole process. My concern rather is like maybe, well, it's probably too late to redo anything, right? It's kind of like a free discussion here. Maybe the way how, in my opinion, I would see the process to go is more that the I'm not sure if this is the right word, but kind of like the leaders of the parties have a discussion on what is realistic to accept in the pirate parties, because in my opinion, the strongest that we can achieve is that we have a common program across Europe that all pirate parties agree. That would be like the best possible result of all of this. And personally, I'm really sad not seeing, for instance, Slovenian pirates here in this meeting. I looked in the pad, in the attendees, I cannot see them here.
I pinged them twice.
Yeah. So maybe maybe they have different concerns. I don't know, but maybe just my small comment about that is maybe it might make sense for the PPEU board as the facilitator of this whole process to contact them and ask them if they have any concerns.
Well,
why they
little
don't,
technical.
yeah.
I was doing all you said actually. like on behalf of the PPU board, but partly it was my own invention.
Yeah,
I actually made a list of all the international coordinators for all the parties I could somehow find. Sorry, Magnus, you are international coordinator, even though you're actually, but you are probably doing everything. So we know the feeling. And I contacted them. Most of them answered me. For example, Rock and Nina actually didn't, and I pinged Nina even on Skype, where we discussed when I went there, and nothing. So I did this. Everything that could have been done for including the pirates in this process. I think I did it. I really don't know what should have I done more.
So I think just to finish on that. So I think that's all great and perfect, because as a principle of subsidiarity, we don't tell the pirate parties how to organize themselves, right? So if we contact the international coordinators, well then it's like their business how to deal with that within the party, and if they send a leader, an international coordinator, an expert in a field, particular field, or like anyone else, like that's their business to solve, right? But I meant after the meeting, maybe it might make sense to contact Rock or whoever is.
Yeah, it will happen. Everything will happen.
Yeah, because it really is of my concern why they did not participate. I would love to see them here in this meeting, and I would be really sad to see if the Slovenian pirates did not accept the Common European Program, as will probably be the result of all these meetings. It would be really bad.
Okay. Francois?
Sorry. Maybe one small. So and then I don't like if it works that way, which means like we discussed through the international coordinators, then I don't really see a problem to kind of like not make it openly public to really everyone, because it's within the business of the pirate party that they share the links on information or anything within the party as they see fit. Of course, everyone understands that anyone can click anything anywhere, but making it like by default public, I'm not sure if it's the right way to do it. But
thank you.
I'm okay to deal with that. Just
Francois?
Yeah, the last point was if we just like creating point for a common program, and that finally each party is free to not take those points. I mean, why do we spend so much energy on it in the first? I mean, be physically present and doing all this work. It costs a lot of resources, time. If the point is letting everyone making his own decision in his national party, maybe we can make the process a little lighter. Maybe we don't have to, I don't know, meet physically every time to work on those. Maybe it can be, I don't know, online. That was the last point.
Yeah, now me, Muriel, Magnus, Mikuláš Magnus, I think. And we kind of need to make it more brief and efficient, because we are really running out of time, and we have ahead of ourselves like foreign defense policy and migration and stuff like that. It's really important. So I would like to hear from you after everyone has their comments also. So what do you want? Like like, okay, so we'll make a schedule. Great, definitely. That's actually a very good idea. I like it, and shall do it, or with the help of the board, because I don't think we have time today to do it. But yeah, it will be under discussion. And yes, sorry, what was the last thing you said, Francois?
Energy and resources, yeah, to be present here to finally.
Yeah. Well, you said something like every time or something like that. I just wanted to mention like it's one meeting and for 5 years, and I think you can see it's really helping, isn't it? Like I think we made a lot of work yesterday that wouldn't happen without it actually, and the working groups now I think will have new push and stuff like that. And I'm not saying we need to meet ever again like in person for this program. You know, next communication can be only online, but I think this was really needed and necessary in my opinion. But I really don't see how it was you know, redundant or something like that. Sorry. Yeah, Maria.
So I wanted to say those two things. The way I was seeing the program process would work this time is that we would have the old common program as a starting point, and then we would elaborate some proposals to update or change some of the sections, and then we would ask the parties to vote those sections separately, and then all those sections that were approved by most parties then will be included in a new version of the common program. And then if that updated version was not approved, then we would always have the old version, let's say, of that section, like in copyright or whatever. So I didn't think that was like very difficult. It was just like a common consensus, and we always have the old so that we can still use, I think, maybe. And but I agree that we should also be realistic and strike anything that might be polemical, just to not to make it harder. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention quickly is that you were talking about how we need to, you know, include everything, that if we meet in person, then it's harder for people who have no money, who have no time, etc. And I think Mumble is not a solution, and the problem is that you have to be there at the same time. And this is also a problem because people have children, they have jobs during the night or during the morning or whatever. So if you really want to make it accessible to everyone, you have to let people log in their own time and discuss in their own time whenever they want. Maybe they want to be 10 hours in a row discussing, or maybe they want to do 5 minutes every day. I don't know. I mean, this is, if you really want to make it accessible, you have to take into account asynchronicity of the system as well. So I just wanted to say that so it's there, and that I think it would be great. I mean, I consider this a personal failure that I didn't succeed to put through when I was member of the board, but I would really like to see some kind of decision making within the European Parliament that it's asynchronous, not only not present but also asynchronous.
Thank you. Mikuláš, yeah, right? I said first Mikuláš and then Magnus. Sorry. Yeah, I see you.
If I may answer your question or comment, European Pirate Party as such, what it is technically, it's registered as an NGO in Brussels. It's registered and its members are not physical persons as single pirates, but rather the parties. So if I should call it in some to describe what it is currently, from my perspective, is something like a confederation of pirate parties in Europe. As such, I think, from my personal perspective, would be fine if the board would say, well, this is the final version of what we have prepared for the parties. But I do not insist on that because I accept the consensus that it works like that, and we should rather not provide political decision or decisions which would look like political. But to a certain degree, we need such a political decisions. We need. It would be great if there is an election program which is approved by a lot of parties, because this time it is likely, or at least very possible, that there will be 2, 3, maybe 4 pirate parties in the European Parliament. I think Czechs, we have quite a good position right now in the opinion polls, but German pirate party is also very likely to get there. I think Swedish pirate party also. Well, Slovenians, they are rather good in polling, so it is pretty good possible that we will be there from different pirate parties. At this point, it would be really good to have a common ground, which we all agreed. Even though the process was based on consensus, and at the end the decision bodies were in various parties, not the same one. And yeah, that's it. and also there is sort of we need it as a ground for the negotiations, that we all start from the same point and we can have some common position. And we need it for outside, because right now, at least Czech Pirate Party, as someone realized that there is a party which is looked like not being aligned with a huge faction. Communists, they tried to convince us to join them. Greens, they are approaching us. There were groups which claim that they are in some connection with En Marche in France, and they act as Czech proxy for En Marche. Whoa, something like that really exists. We were approached by DM. That's the group organized by Yanis Varoufakis. We were approached.
Okay, wrap it up.
Yeah,
Please.
like there are a lot of.
Yeah, we are favorite.
Popular. No. Like this is really big discussion, because at the end we will have to decide which faction we will join. And what I would like to achieve, that all the pirates which are in the European Parliament will decide it somehow together. Not that part will go there and part there. This is really dangerous. Yep. And for that reason, we need such a program.
Magnus?
Yeah. Well, I just want to add a very short thing here. Francois, you were concerned that we might not agree upon the entire program, and so that we will be diverse. I think this is crucial, what we're doing right now, to avoid that, because we can actually voice our concerns already now. But of course, it's always up to our members in the separate countries to say that we want this or not. So that's generally how it works, at least for us in Sweden. We can't really say that this is the politics that we're going to run. Our members will say, yeah, this looks good. In 99% of the time, they will say that, okay, you've been working a lot and this looks good. We don't have any other suggestions. So sure, we will go with this suggestion. And also, meeting physically is so much stronger when it comes to building a unity, when it comes to building a team feeling, and just hearing the voices of people and see them physically as they speak. It's so much stronger, which means that we will understand each other much better, even online or in text later on. So this is really, yes. So this is really important that we do.
Cedric?
In fact, I.
Oh, sorry, you had technical.
Two concerns. First, I will answer to Nicholas. In fact, you push a point around alliances and how we work with outside parties. In fact, we have a big question about that and how we can build the program with our allies. In fact, we are also approached by Greens, by Simile Greens, Simile Greens, not so righties, hopefully. But we need to know, in fact, how to work with our pirate party partners in Europe and according to local alliance. This is not a concern that we put today, but you put a problem on the table. Maybe it's not now the question to answer, but it's actually a question that we need to have an answer. Really.
Technical, if we have time at the end of the day, there is actually on the agenda discussing post-election strategy. So yeah, it will be mentioned.
And my second concern is about Muriel. In fact, you said you speak about asynchronicity, and we all agree in France about that. We have a process around asynchronicity to build our program, our process. And we hope, in fact, to have participation with that, creating forces around who can be present or not at a time permits everyone to participate. In fact, one of my proposals can be today, when we have time after the discussions, to show you how we work, not to impose our point of view, but in fact, putting some images about what we are saying.
Okay. Alex?
Yes, okay. Correct. Mikuláš, PPU is registered in Luxembourg. No.
Okay.
And, yes, I agree with Muriel, but I think we have to make the process clear at the time. When we have a common European election program, and I think this is important, and when we do not change this program, it will be also the election program for 2019. And now the process should be that we made amendments to this existing program, and therefore we have to write this motions. Yes. And this will be the process in the working group. So we have seen in the discussion that the topic of a working group means not it is only one amendment. Perhaps out of the topic of the working groups, we have 2 or 3 amendments to the existing CEP. And then, and this perhaps we have to agree, I think it's up to the member parties to say this amendment okay, this amendment not okay. Yes. And then at the end we have an updated CEP.
Okay, last comment from Marcel, and then we'll end it if you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm usually bad at praising others for what they did, and usually share concerns and objections. I just want to say I do not want to throw a monkey wrench in the process. If nothing changes and we continue in the process as it is, I'm still willing to participate because I think it's super important. And I'd like to thank everyone in the PPU board and everyone who participates and made this possible that it happened, because I think it's really, really super important, and thanks for that. To the point of asynchronous meetings and offline meetings and versus versus meeting at one place. I know it takes a lot of time and effort of people, and they invest a lot of money and time in that, and sacrifice their free time and their families and everything. But it is actually really efficient to meet in person for many reasons. Even companies who like are just for profit only, they waste a lot of money so that people really like go across continents and meet, because it really has a purpose, and it's really important.
Thank you. So yeah, the result is that definitely the PPU will make a schedule so that we know the following process, and yeah. Plus, if there is time after the meeting, we'll gladly see what you've got. Cool. So we are now moving to the highlight of the day, which is foreign and defense policy and migration. It's supposed to be 2 program points, of course, but it is so interconnected that it's so interconnected that I put it, under one discussion, one long discussion, because I don't think we should really divide it in our discussion. So okay. I think there are a few people that were in the working groups. I don't know who's on the Mumble.
Let me check.
I think, yes, Marketa.
Yes, Alex?
Perhaps let's start with migration policies.
Migration?
Yes.
Okay. Why? Yeah.
Because from as a result of this discussion, we have to discuss also the foreign or defense policy of the European Union.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I don't get this. We now are discussing both points: foreign and defense policy and migration.
It's correct. So only I will start with asylum and migration. Okay.
Okay, you were in the working group.
Yes.
Cool.
We have really a small meeting, yes, and also you see in the pad the result is not really it's not fully completed, but I think the points are nearly set what we could write in the CEP. Therefore, it's the first sentence which really important, and I think we thought that that should be 100% agreement inside the European pirates. The European approach to asylum and refugees must be based on the acknowledgement of human rights and fully respect the Geneva Convention on Refugees and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. These are human rights, human dignity. And I think, and you know, it is really, really sad, especially also in Germany in the last weeks, that this point will not be in the center of the discussion. And yeah, but you know the political reality, yes. But I think for pirates it's very important to say this is our most important point. Yes, we have now, European neighborhood policy should be geared towards lasting improvement of living conditions and focus the partner countries and region and so on. I think this is a headline. We have to amend another point later to that. I think we should start with the topic migration, because there is a connection between migration and asylum policy, but it's not really the same. Because migration policy, it's the right of the member states to define how they handle migration. You know, in Germany, yes, for I think 40 years, especially conservatives say no, we are no migration country. Yes, we have enough people, we don't need new people. Yeah, but you have discussed this seriously. Is this really the fact? And in fact, you know, in most European countries, especially in Spain, there is a market for migration, illegal migration. Yes. And therefore, this is the approach of pirate parties. Such illegal structures are very, very bad for society. So, to solve all problems with illegal migration, we have to legalize migration.
So we can go through the text, or
yes, this is the first point. For migration, European pirates demands a common European immigration policy that enables ways of legal migration to the European labor market. And point language skills and so on, and certificates should be recognized. These are also related points. Now, for what's this asylum? The difference is for migration, there is in that moment not really a common European policy. But for asylum, we have since 20 years a common European policy. Nobody recognizes, and it not really works. Especially this Dublin treaties did not really work. And therefore, it is not a new discussion since 5 years. The European Commission think about to make changes to this asylum policy, and so we also made this point that all asylum seekers can apply only once for asylum in Europe. This is, of course, a Dublin process, but you have to guarantee this, that when asylum seeker apply for asylum, that it's made for Europe and European countries. Taking care of people whose application is rejected in a humanitarian way, this is, of course, said, and freedom of establishment in Europe for those whose application was approved. This is also, if the asylum application is accepted, the possibility of family reunification should be promoted first. Yes, also right of child, we have it the headline. Possibilities for applications on asylum should be introduced even outside of Europe if accepted help out to be offered. This is also not a new proposal, it's also discussed with the Commission, but I think this discussion has to be enforced from high. And now there are very important general points. Born children of asylum seekers and immigrants should be given citizenship according to their place of birth in Europe. This is a hard question because it has to changed by the member states, the domain of the member states. Yeah. But I think it could help also in the discussion of citizenship and migration. And so, if so requested, so of course, it should not be automatically. We have discussed this point, like in the United States, only if the parents are requested. The respective nationality of the parents can optionally be granted additionally. This is the most important point. The status change for asylum seekers to possible migrants is mandatory. This creates the biggest problem in that moment, because a lot of people came to Europe and they asylum, but they are possible migrants. They know it. But when they have that one-time asylum, they never be able to be a legal migrant. Yeah. And this means status change. Yeah. That somebody who applied for asylum after a time, he can say, okay, now I will apply to be a migrant.
Okay.
Yeah. These are the points, and you see that Michael has added something, and also I said it, sometimes I haven't had the time to,
we'll go through what they written in the pad
it is more the connection to the foreign policy. So we have decided that we have also a chapter how we can fight against reasons for flight and migration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Mikuláš, Antigone, and then I will probably read what's in the pad also from others.
Okay. It looks I will unfortunately have the unlucky role of local Viktor Orban, at least for this meeting. That's kind of curse of my country. Sorry for that. Well, let's go from up down. I see a pretty good reason for having a common European asylum policy because, right now, what we are facing is kind of asylum shopping. Some people like go from country to country and try to find a way, try to find the easiest way to get asylum. So for obvious reason, the rules should be in all countries the same, so that no one will cheat it. On the other hand, I don't understand why should we have a common migration policy, because right now it works, and don't ask me why it works that way. But for example, Czechia has easier or some simplified processes for people coming from Ukraine, Vietnam, and Mongolia. Don't ask me why these three countries has some weird reasons, but I do not understand why such a simplified processes should be same in all countries. I can pretty much understand that Germany can have some special relationship with Turkey, for example. I don't know if it's like it, but expect. And I don't see the reason why should we have why should all the states have the same policy on that. And from my perspective, it somehow violates the idea of subsidiarity. That's my probably the greatest concern to the first two paragraphs about the general idea of well, let's discuss it later. Just this question, if I may.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Answered. We have already in 20 years a common European asylum policy, but it not really works. Yes. And perhaps we can change the session. I don't mean with a common European immigration policy that the rules in all member states have to be the same. It is mandatory that, and I said it in the beginning, migration is a domain of the member states. But we have some coordination. Perhaps we can change it. A coordinated migration policy calls for the enable way of legal migration to the European labor market. And especially this is labor market regulation, which concerns migration policy.
Technical?
Yeah, there is so far no regulation which defines the minimal request that the member states should have on incoming migrants. So the labor market is to a certain degree protected, but definitely the member states have the opportunity to invite people on their labor market, and after they fulfill the common criteria for getting citizenship, which is minimally I think 8 years of residency, the people get the citizenship, and when they get the citizenship of the member state, they automatically receive citizenship of the EU, and therefore can move freely within the EU. So somehow the member states have already an option to invite people on the common market and somehow regulate it, and I would not make it or are we going to easier or make it more complicated?
No, easier.
Easier, like
okay,
lower this demanded residency time or residency period, or what would be the easy?
No, but we will. I think I will take this point from you. We discussed it in the working group how to change it. Because you are right when we say common European migration policy, that is misleading. Because it should not be a European authority who decides who can come in and who cannot come.
Anticon?
Yeah, just a little point on the Dublin process, just to be sure if I understand well. Line 896, when you say all asylum seekers can apply only once for asylum in Europe, it means that the asylum demand will be treated on a European level? Yeah, it's that, okay. Yeah. Okay, so then it's okay for me. But maybe just to precise this, may I write in the text?
Yeah, perhaps we will also discuss. I said it was a first proposal, not really fully worked out. we take a lot from the Czech pirates. Mikuláš,
like, if I may comment on it.
And only said it is today so that each asylum seeker can apply only once or should apply only once, but this will not really work on different reasons.
Yeah, and pardon, just to clarify, because I think the problem now is that we have different level of acceptance for asylum demands, and the asylum applicants are not free to choose the country where they want to apply, because it has to be the arrival country in Europe, and that's the big problem. One of the and that's why if we say it's treated, the treatment of the demand is on the European level, you can solve the question, or you can say the migrants are free to choose. And now I'll let you speak, Mikuláš, sorry.
If I may, I'm perfectly fine, and it's actually the party's position, that the asylum seeker will choose the country he's applying for. What is for marketing purposes very toxic is to say it will be treated on the European level, because well, there should be common rules, but it has to be applied by the member state employees. People are at this point very aggressive about like some Brussels official deciding who will receive the asylum or not. I find it has to be some Czech or whatever.
Yes, of course, it is really necessary that asylum seekers can apply for a special state, because asylum seekers go there where their parents or family living, and this helps, because then he has a base also for integration. But we will not say that every asylum seeker has the right to choose the country. He can apply, and when his reasons are approved, he can go. But otherwise, if you had not a special reason to go to a special country, there should be another policy how to find the country the asylum seekers treat.
Yes, I'm fine with that, but just to represent the party position, it should be on the voluntary base, so you should not say this will be the country you are forced to go, because this actually not work.
No, that's correct, and we have decided not to put too many things here in the program. This is, a very complicated decision. But by the way, perhaps also today, every member state gets money from the European Union for every asylum seeker. So it's partly on the European level.
So there are some comments in the chat. I'd suggest I read them. The proposals that I think Michael is has written down, and we can of course discuss them, but also give +1 to the proposal if you agree and the working group, in your opinion, should implement it. So the first proposal is. He's asking what about the economic causes of escape, e.g. economic partnership agreements and sustainable development goal. Therefore, he suggests the agrarian and economic policies of the European Union must be geared to self-sufficiency, self-determination, and raise added value in states of the global south. Business contracts have to be adapted to this goal. Then, financial assistance under development aid must be provided directly to local organizations or internationally active non-governmental organizations. Additionally, education programs for refugees so that they can help with this knowledge in their country of origin, and education programs for people in countries of the global south are to be financed. Former colonial states must primarily support states of their former colonies. Where there is a small discussion. Clement writes, be careful, in some cases those kind of relations turn out to be hidden colonization or neo-colonization. Yeah. So, do you want to discuss what Michael is proposing, or do you want to just plus one it, or are there some opinions? I actually don't really know whether to implement it if it's not, redundant. But yeah, Antigone.
Just on the part financial assistance for development must be provided directly to local organizations and internationally active non-governmental organizations. Okay, first it should come maybe in the point international cooperation and not here. And secondly, with the content, I'm really not sure about that, because development policy, you need, or at least until yet, you need a state, or you need at least some public authority, and I'm not sure local organization or NGOs, you can say they are less corrupt than official state, but in the reality they're not. And even in the reality of country where the structure and especially the financial control structure are not so strong to straight against political power or against some parallel economies. So I'm really not sure this point will really make some improvement in the international cooperation policy of the European Union.
Okay. You can maybe give it -1. I don't know. Any more comments? If not, we can actually then, the working group under Alex's lead will then work on it. Sorry, Mikuláš.
I'm not sure if it's a good idea to have this mention about the born children of asylum seekers, because I'm not really able to find anything like that in our party position, and if it should be consensual, I must unfortunately request that this whole sentence or the whole line 903 should be removed. I do not object it. In fact, I have no problem with that, but I have no mandate to accept it. And at this point, I really have to be strict.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe delete the sentence. Yes, in the discussion, it was also a little bit controversial, and as I said before, citizenship is in the domain of the member countries, so it is a little bit hard to have something in the common European program. But it was really I personally think it should be a very helpful regulation.
I think we will.
But we have to work for that inside the member.
We would easily fall into stupid discussion about whether the asylum seekers should be held outside of the EU borders, which is current proposal. Right. And I'm not really willing to support Kurt's position. System.
Okay.
Yeah, like that. Sounds good.
I have a small comment actually. Maybe a question. Like if you really want to call our rights of women and LGBTQI plus, like to me it sounds like it's popular to do it, but like for me calling specific groups of people it feels a little weird, because from my perspective, like all people should be treated equally. I just feel a little.
Which point are you?
National protection of rights.
789. I understand that. I agree with that. I I just like my approach is more like general, because I think like all people should be treated equally. And
we are not there yet, but yeah, we are getting to the point. Thank you. Okay.
But I will still maybe open the debate, because I think this point is not here at the right place. It should be actually in the asylum seeker policy, and it. Okay, if I begin really to speak about it, it will take a little bit long, because it's more focused on international what is international cooperation and what is European Union doing on this stage. So let it skip short. If we want to reinforce the protection on the sexual minorities and LGBTQI+, then it will be, I think, more efficient to say, as European Union, we, in our asylum seeker policy, we have something like a strong regards on the protection of the asylum seekers that are asking us for protection on this reason, because they are persecuted in their country. Okay. So we will especially protect them and welcome them. Okay. But for the international cooperation, then I think the point is not at its right place.
Okay. There. Okay, then it makes much more sense to me. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we naturally and gradually moved from migration to the foreign defense policy. Thank you. So did someone took the minutes of this because or you can actually move it in debate as you suggested.
If everyone will be.
Where are we? What is the line?
It was line 790.
790.
We go backwards. That was puzzled me as well.
But we have things to say on this point, so I think there is things that are mixed up. We have to.
And I agree with the LGBTQ comment also.
Yes, you can move it, but then we will work it out at the next meeting.
Yeah, I will just make a comment that it should be in that part.
I just make the comment?
Yeah, and then the work group will take care of it.
Okay, that means that if we move on to the paragraph above, general declaration, or, well, yeah, let's begin from the beginning. Or is there someone from the working group that would like to take the lead in explaining what work was done?
I see nobody. Okay, I had no time to participate in this working, but I will be at the next.
Yeah, I was in some Mumble meetings, but there was no, we didn't prepare any text as far as I know. So maybe, do you know where this text is from? Like, I know it's from the working pad, but
yeah, it's what? I know there were 2 meetings, and Thomas Gaul was also on these 2 meetings.
Yeah, I was there too, but we didn't create this, so I wonder.
Perhaps somebody has created.
Or is it the old CEEP or something like that?
No, I don't think so. We hadn't such big paragraphs.
Okay, so whoever put it in there, we can then begin with the general declaration. That's online, sorry, I don't know which line, because on the mobile phone there are no lines.
781.
Thank you. So, yeah, I will probably read it out. Why not? The Pirate Party believes in the European Union's ability to create exchanges of ideas, experience and knowledge, both between Europeans and the rest of the world. Sharing information, knowledge and culture brings people closer together and society develops. Strengthening Europeans' opportunities to share anti-social ties with each other should be the primary objective of the EU project. The goal of the European foreign affairs policies is to build durable diplomatic relations between the European Union and the other states. Those bilateral relations can be based on cultural, economic or technological exchanges. The building of the European diplomacy have to respect the protection of rights and the sustainable development. Yeah, I think it's really general declaration. I don't have personally a problem with that. Maybe shorten it, but not necessarily. Just general declarations are just like that. Not really.
It's very general.
It's fine.
And generic. Okay.
I would maybe add to the protection of rights and sustainable development also freedom of internet. I need it though.
Okay. The last sentence, minute takers. Mikołaj suggests to add their freedom of internet. Okay, so the next paragraph will be transferred and was already discussed, if I understand it correctly. Or does anyone want to add something to it?
Yeah, I have so how the freedom of internet adds to the last sentence on just one.
I consider freedom of internet to be, for pirates at least, so important, even more important than the sustainable development, for example. It's just like that. There should be protection of rights, freedom of internet, and sustainable development.
Yeah, let's stagnate, but free internet.
In foreign affairs.
Internet first. Yes, in foreign affairs. No one will do any Chinese firewalls and whatever like that. No one will do VPNs and nothing like that. We disagree that internet will be separated in some pieces.
Yeah.
Nothing like local countries' internet.
Cedric is next, Alex. Then so Cedric.
Yes, in fact, the point is we have European policy, and in this part we are speaking of what we want for the world. So it may be redundant, but it's easier to say it again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like
thanks for the clarification.
Like leaving the sentence as it is, I would not be surprised in Green Party program, but for pirates, I really need some reiteration of our main value.
Something piratey.
Something piratey, yeah.
Alex,
yeah, but it's on the right place, because foreign affairs are everything which deals with international treaties, and also for a free internet you need international treaties. So correct.
Okay. Then there's the paragraph we dealt with, or does someone want to add something to it, even though we are moving it? Sorry, I'm now reading the comment. I thought we are completely omitting the protection of the LGBTQ rights because we think everyone is human and their rights should be protected. Or did I misunderstood Marta?
No, that's...
Yeah, and I agree with him actually, so that's my suggestion, but we can discuss it. Oh, and there's the part about whistleblowers also, we can leave it there? I think yes, probably. I mean, maybe it might get a little bit controversial, but I think...
perhaps only a remark, it is a little bit weak for an internet protection of fundamental rights. So we should say something more general and then can leave it in, and perhaps how to mention women and LGBT key people. This should be discussed in the working group.
Yeah, so somehow empower the paragraph, and then we can mention whistleblowers, but yeah, it has to have some common ground, like, okay, I agree. Any more comments on this paragraph? If not, then, international trade policy.
Does this mean that we want to give Edward Snowden an asylum?
Sure.
Yes,
Sounds
of course.
reasonable.
This is a one of our.
That's why I say it might be controversial, but yeah, that's what we do.
Fine with that. I just want to make it clear.
Well,
Yeah, in our party there might be some problems with that, but we'll deal with that.
it's about the program.
Yes.
Yeah?
If someone has the problem with the party program, then he should leave the party.
Well, there.
Or change the program.
Yeah. Or find the support for changing the program. But
Or
yeah,
find the support for changing program.
Yeah, Victor, go.
we are representing the official party, or like we should introduce official party documents. What's wrong with you?
In Germany we had such a song, die Partei, die hat immer.
And what a great party was it?
And maybe we can organize the parade, you know?
There are many reasons that this party is gone.
Die Partei, no.
Die Partei.
So,
No one will replace Martin Sonnenborn.
Yeah.
So, leaving Snowden where he is, international trade policy. Okay, there is already some comment from Marek. I will that's a longer one. I see the money is always most interesting. So I will probably again read it. Introduction is: pirates consider the right to privacy and self-determination of the people as self-evident. Those rights need to be respected and promoted in the context of trade agreements. As part of the European economic diplomacy, the focus has to be on avoiding lasting imbalances in the exchange of goods and services. We reject multilateral international agreements that force dysfunctional monopolies and patents to the detriment of civil rights and human freedoms. Yes, the working group proposes the international trade policy from the 2014 CEEP can be integrated to this part. Yeah, I don't know.
I guess that's the text then.
Yeah. So this is from the CEEP 2014. Okay, in that case, I think there won't be much comments because we already agreed on it 5 years ago. But if we want to somehow update it, Exile?
Well, just a short comment on this. I find it quite difficult to speak about this in Catalonia, because if I read this, pirates consider the right of privacy and self-determination of people as self-evident. Well, the European Union should have some kind of treatment with Catalonia. When Catalonia self-determinates, we want to be on our own. You know?
We actually would like to include it would be great if we could include a point about self-determination. So
it's there.
That was something that
concerning trade agreements, but
yeah, it's kind in a strange
maybe trying to
place.
expand it.
Yeah, it actually is in a strange place.
Like
we would maybe like to put it in
problem
the civil rights
translation,
place or
it's
something.
not written as self-determination of peoples, but self-determination of people.
Well, people is a plural for me.
Peoples are like nations, you know. In
You can see it however you want, of course.
Well, this is not the case. It looks like, but it's not the case. The S is missing.
Of citizens.
Of citizens, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, remove people as citizens.
I would actually move the first, paragraph. Pirates consider blah blah trade agreements somewhere else, without the trade agreements. Like, I think it's a really redundant part of the introduction. It's, the part where you want the paragraph to be longer and sound official, but I really don't get it why there's that we need to consider self-determination as self-evident in respect of trade agreements. I don't get it. So maybe, of course, there's a question whether to put the self-determination in the civil rights part of the program, but I'm now talking about this trade agreement thing, so I don't know. Do you agree?
I should interpret it as, I think the request is that the trade agreements should should consider also protection of personal data.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, Alex.
yeah, perhaps we have also discussed this rules from the old CEP. What perhaps is more a general thing is that you have to include some kind of social standards inside this trade agreement. So this is an old battle also with WTO. And I think this is recurring on that self-determination and privacy should not be affected by trade agreements. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it? No. Okay.
Okay, if you all agree, yeah, Marcel. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So trade agreements are the most rigid type of documents that can be signed. Basically, it's very difficult to get rid of them or change them if there's something wrong with them. So I understand the intent behind all this, and I would even maybe make it broader to kind of put a statement here that um, the civil rights and fundamental freedoms cannot be anyhow compromised within trade agreements. So maybe the privacy and self-determination would be just an example of these rights, but maybe I would even suggest to make it even more general to like not let any kind of trade agreement touch anything from that, including privacy.
And copyright.
Like the copyright is a fundamental right.
Copyright.
I'm just thinking about TTIP and ACTA and all this shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like we had already these attacks in the past, and they most probably will be again on the table in the future. So stating that we're not in the business of letting trade agreements to touch our fundamental rights is, I think, what we should do.
Okay. Any more comments, or we can move to principles, which we are kind of in already, but okay. So pirates stipulate that in all negotiations of the European Union on trade agreements, the following conditions must be met. First, stronger participation of the European Parliament. Second, comprehensive access to information and public hearings. Third, respect for self-determination and privacy. And fourth, the interests of small and medium-sized enterprises must be taken into account. So there's already a debate in the self-determination and privacy point, but does anyone want to comment on that or discuss at some point? Antigone?
These points are in the CEP 2014. They are not new.
Yeah, but okay. When they are here, we can go through them so that
sure.
we have even less work later on the CEP.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Marek. Marcel?
Yeah, maybe I just recalled what Nikolai said in the previous section. Maybe the freedom of internet maybe should be specifically called out here.
Like a new point or in one of the points?
I don't know really, but it's just a thought. Again, we have seen in the past attacks on the freedom of internet through trade agreements like ACTA. So maybe when we're mentioning civil rights and fundamental rights, maybe freedom of internet is one of the things that we should specifically say because we are pirates and we want. It's just a suggestion. Take it or leave it.
Well, I'm personally more happy with the freedom of internet in the introduction, because, and I wouldn't double it, but
okay,
that's just my opinion. Okay. Well, the working group can maybe decide. Someone will write down your suggestion, and then they will decide where it's best. Okay, any more comments on these points? If not, then stronger participation by the European Parliament is next. Trade agreements contain political decisions that are important and difficult to change after they are adopted. Therefore, the European Parliament, the only body in the EU that has a direct democratic mandate, should have equal rights to the European Commission when dealing with trade policies. The European Parliament, via its Committee on International Trade, should participate as an equal partner of the European Commission in negotiations of trade agreements. Any comments? I think it's good. Nikolaj? Are you sure?
Like, I have no problem with empowering European Parliament, but at this point it sounds like weird mixing of executive and legislative power for me.
Alex?
Yeah. No, I think in opposite. It is correct that the treaties, the negotiation is an executive option, but the results of this negotiation have to be adopted by the parliament. Yes. And therefore, I think it's necessary that the parliament is also involved at the level of negotiations. This is an old conflict between parliament and executive, legislative and executive. But at the end, we have the problem also in the parliament that the government came, okay, now we have this negotiation. The parliament said, no, we want this amendment. They say, no, it's not possible because the negotiations are closed. And this should not be
happening.
And on the other hand, at the stage of the European Union now, the Parliament is the only representative of the citizens, not the Commission. So we may have a better defense of the interests of the European Union by the Parliament and by the Commission, who are more representing the interests of the member.
Marcel?
Yeah, maybe. Well, probably you would know better than I do, as you are a parliamentarian at a national level. But maybe isn't it kind of like usual that a committee of a parliament has access to negotiations on national level? I mean, on national level, like these committees, I think they kind of participate in discussions, don't they?
On national level, it works that way that you are supposed to control the government. That means that you can invite, for example, the foreign ministry affairs and asking questions. You can invite people from the foreign ministry and discuss with them. You can request documents. That's perfectly fine. But I think it would be weird if I, as a member of parliament, would go there on the negotiations and say, well, this is the position of government and this is the position of us, of parliament, and then how would we look like for the other partners? That we are like two-headed body? That's weird. Like, I'm definitely for, and if it would be possible, for example, to change the treaties that way, that it would be easier to what's it called, in the vote of unconfidence, like to replace the European Commission chairman, because currently you need 2/3 majority to dismiss him from office in the parliament, which is very hard to achieve. He needs just 1/2 majority, so the simple one, to get confidence, but 2/3 majority to be dismissed from the office. This is weird, and I would change it, but I think the parliament should not get executive powers.
No, of course not. But I think it's a misunderstanding between this legislation and the government. Yes, of course, it's the right of the government to do this negotiation. But the problem is, and we have this often, that the government do the legislative work. Because in this negotiation, they made decisions which have to do with the parliament. And then when it came to the parliament, and that's the point, that the parliament should be involved also in this negotiation level to have the...
Mikuláš Marcel?
Just a comment. As a parliamentarian, you usually don't have the resources which the government has. The problem is that, for example, for the proposals you are proposing, you should have something which is called regulatory impact assessment. Basically, assessment how will your law affect different groups in the society. And as a parliamentarian, you simply have no resources to, for example, prepare this kind of analysis. That's a good reason to, at least the more complicated proposals, to leave them on the government, because they have this resources. Of course, if you are in the opposition, you should have the option to do some minor changes, but to prepare a complex law like an international treaty is really...
only not to prepare, but maybe it only is the right of the parliament to view into the draft.
That's definitely true.
Yes. No? That's perhaps at this point.
Yep.
Most.
Yep. Like commenting and viewing is perfectly fine.
That's okay.
It was Kolas and you.
Yeah. So maybe you came to the conclusion that I actually wanted to present for myself. So what says Mikuláš to me makes a complete sense, and maybe the solution exactly is the European Parliament, through possibly the subcommittee, should have the possibility to access, should have the right to access all the negotiation materials, and that might kind of solve the problem that both there is transparency and there is no like a two-headed body to the outside partner who is discussing.
Only a short amendment. We have a lot of struggles with the government. The government only say, no, I cannot tell to the parliament, that I also can tell it to the public. Yes, but this is a wrong understanding from government to parliament.
Yeah, that's just crippled.
Yeah,
that's crippled and should be clearly refused.
So, okay, a consensus.
Yeah, so I think it's about like the parliament should have access to it, and then they can like discuss with the commission on like what the position of the parliament is or whatever else. But on the outside world, we have the commission who is the body that negotiates.
Okay. Good. I'm glad I came to consensus. So the next point is comprehensive access to information and public hearings. All documents concerning the negotiations of trade agreements should be made available to the European Parliament as well as to the public. All negotiations and hearings with stakeholders should be conducted in public. We demand that all results of consultations, especially submissions by stakeholders, must be published promptly and in full. Any comments on that?
Just
okay.
Standing the previous discussion.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so it should be applied to both paragraphs. Okay. So maybe, yeah, just write it down that the same applies to both.
No, I think like the point of this one and the previous one basically is that pirates are completely against secret negotiations of trade agreements.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess the rest of the parliament will not see that fly.
Yeah.
Because that's, I mean, just look at TTIP was
well, that's
silly.
Yeah, but that does not force us to adopt the
No, of course not.
view of the world.
Right? No, of course not. I totally agree with you. I'm just saying that in reality, it's going to be really hard to push this through. But I'm all for it. I would love to see this happen.
Okay. Respect for privacy and self-determination part. Pirates consider the right to privacy and self-determination of the people as self-evident. Oh, I've read it before. Therefore, they also need to be respected and promoted in the context of trade agreements. As these principles apply to all people, the EU has to make sure that trade agreements will not allow their trading partners to breach them. Yeah, it's kinda in the introduction. I don't think we need to repeat that really in a separate point, so I would completely cross it out. But I don't know. What about you?
It's not bad to repeat as long as it's the same thing that is being repeated. That said, I think, well, it depends. Sometimes people read just some points, not all the text. So it's like you don't have anything on this, and yeah, it's in the introduction.
Yeah, so maybe cross it from the introduction and
leave
it like that.
I would rather say put it in here and skip it in the introduction if we don't want to repeat ourselves.
Cedric?
In fact, it's a stylish presentation of the program. So yes, we have introduction and we have repetition in the whole draft of this point. Maybe we can see further in our process how to present our program. In fact, as I said, it's a stylish presentation. Maybe we can avoid this problem with a common presentation. In fact, we can dismiss this point, this kind of problem for now for this draft. Please.
Okay. And the last trade agreement point from the old CEP is the interests of small and medium-sized enterprises must be taken into account. Well, that's a long headline. At the moment, trade agreements mainly take into account the interests of global enterprises, while small and medium-sized companies rarely benefit. SMEs are increasingly ousted from the market. We want to change that.
Yeah,
Marcel?
if I might, I would be a little careful with that. I'm not sure like how to really reflect what I'm going to say, whether to phrase it or like what to do. But what I have seen in the past is trade agreements and regulations like directives being proposed in the name of SMEs, while they were not while this was an excuse actually to impose that kind of regulation, if you know what I mean.
It was misuse.
Yeah, it was kind of like abusing the interest of SMEs as an excuse for introducing regulation on something. Well, like this is one of the most let's say popular excuses to be used to introduce a regulation.
Like,
you know what I mean? Or
I know what you mean, but after hearing of these both speeches in the parliament before last voting on copyright, I've realized that there is infinite space for demagogy and misusing of any argument. So I would not care about it. I would just reiterate it and even more stress this particular point, and I would say like small enterprise, the interests of small enterprises should be promoted. I really feel we should support them actively.
And why don't we call instead of SMEs European enterprises maybe?
Because, for example, Agrofert is also a European enterprise, and I'm not going to promote their interests. They are good in doing it anyway, so they don't hit me.
Aren't they an SME?
No, they aren't. It's the same.
Alex, you want to add something?
Yes, this is a point. SMEs. You can take it or leave it. I think it makes not really a difference, but perhaps it's good to have something in the program when we speak with SMEs.
Maybe one more.
Marcel?
So maybe European SMEs? I'm sorry for pushing on the European word. But I think it might be the point of that, right? Like we're not going to compromise trade agreements for Google and Facebook. We want to have the interest of European SMEs to be taken into account. I think isn't that the point?
Alex?
I don't think you cannot go so in detail what the SMEs are doing. In general, you think, or most politicians, most people think that from international trade only the big companies will profit. In fact, is it not so? Special globalization is for medium-sized enterprises, and that are 80% of German enterprises are medium. There are also big enterprises. So it is a political position which you can take, yes, and it has a good value for the voters. We are the party who also care about small medium. So it's nothing more inside this point.
So, yeah, Nicholas?
Just to comment to the European, I think, or in general, we have a philosophy that the third countries or the other countries we are making trade deals with should not be exploited. So, speaking about small enterprises, I would also like to protect those which are in those countries out of Europe, not only those Europeans. Maybe it's not that much selfish as one would expect or would want from European politician, but I think we still have some global responsibility as pirates, and we cannot like just omit them. You know what I mean?
So maybe that might be in a different point here.
John wanted to comment.
Yeah. So there is, like the reality is that the huge multinational companies, all of them basically are American and are traded on New York Stock Exchange. Like there is a little number of European-based corporations that are of the size of the American ones. I think it's in the interest of the European Union um, to promote more European companies than others. That maybe that's.
Wait, Alex. John was first, then you.
No, I think it all depends if you think that small or medium-sized companies are good also for democracy, which I think is so. I think that ending up with our oligopolies for, or 6 companies in X sector will kill democracy, certainly. And so if you think so, it's fair to try to ensure that trade agreements don't impose that type of monopolies in developing countries. So I think it would be fair to not to only think of European countries, but also other countries.
Alex?
But I think, well, I spoke about it's more important to have social standards in the trade agreements, and this is only concerns only the trade policy organization. And by the way, 60% of the small and medium-sized German companies are owned by 10 families.
Yeah, I think that is a bigger issue actually.
So, what is the result of the discussion that should be written for the working group to implement? We don't have a reason.
It's mainly fine, but we have really forgotten the social rights in the other countries, and that's something the trade agreements should really promote.
Okay. Good. So then there are 2 points added from somewhere. I don't think this is all CEP.
No, it's no more CP 1.3 and 1.4 come from the working group.
Yeah, I know. It's just not from the old CEP.
No, it's not from the old.
That was my point. Well, we can go through them anyway. So conflict, well, it's more defense policy, but we'll see, okay. Conflicts resolution. Pirates want to pay special attention to the stabilization of conflict outbreaks and fragile states, as their instability is a source of problems for the entire international community. Okay, it's not in the defense point yet, so we can definitely discuss it. Now we are discussing defense generally, I guess. This should be definitely moved from the trade agreement.
Not really only defense policy, because I think speaking about countries like Somalia, you really don't want to have something like that anywhere all over the world, because it's it's source of terrorism, it's source of diseases.
Yeah,
because
so
there's no medical
it should be like under the whole foreign policy point. Okay, I can agree with that. And what about the point itself? Sorry, Exile, did you raise your hand?
No.
Sorry.
I'm happy.
Good. I like happy people. I agree with the point. Is it okay with all the other parties also? Antigone?
I don't know what is meant with pay attention to stabilization. If it's military intervention, I'm not so happy with that. If it's stop weapon export, then I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, I get it.
It's my problem with the point.
Cedric?
In fact, the answer is in the point. We're in the first, in fact, not in the defense. So this is not a military solution, but a diplomatic solution.
Yeah. like we strive for stabilized countries, not
Because we are talking about
countries
states which
distorted
work
by
that way, that there is a capital city, which is somehow controlled by the government, and the surrounding is controlled by criminal gangs. And is it, let's say, understandable that we like help them by sending policemen to take control over the rest of the country?
I don't. Is it technical? Because Alex was first.
That's the explanation.
Only it was that foreign policy, so this means diplomatic actions. And yeah, you can imagine that a lot of foreign policies is able to destabilize, and when the state is destabilized, then it came to this scenario.
Cedric?
In fact, Nicolas, it's not imagination, your situation. We had the case with Egypt and the past when our former Minister of Policy, Police, in fact, proposed to send policemen into Egypt to aid the regime in place to go against the manifestants. So there is a problem, in fact, to go in this kind of things, because a revolution, as bad as it may seem or be, it may be legitimate. It's very. We need to see both sides and take and send forces is a big step in the process. So that's why it's in the foreign affairs, not in the defense.
Yeah, for sure, you can put the point, I think, regardless in defense or foreign affairs, but really it's more about, how do you say, ingerence? Yeah, sorry. Interfering.
Yes.
Interference. And then it's really a narrow part. I can understand we want to support, to consolidate a fragile state. On the other hand, how to stay neutral, because I don't think we have to take part in the internal affair of the country. If a revolution is coming, then the European Union, I think, should stay more or less neutral. On the other hand, if you have a dictator killing his population, you cannot be neutral. So
Mikuláš, Magnus, Cedric?
I think to help a little bit, not just saying fragile states, maybe we should add democratic there, because if a state is truly democratic, it doesn't have to be a revolution to start with. There won't be a dictator doing shitty things with the people. So that would kind of help this argument that we're having right now.
Maybe a comment. Of course, the revolution could be like legitimate. I don't personally like intervening. On the other hand, when there is something like, for example, Islamic State, which is an entity killing people, very torturing them, and organizing terrorist attacks in other countries, and the result is that actually there is a huge migration, or sorry, refugee crisis in Europe. Maybe it's a time to do some interfering, because obviously this is not the case we want to support.
Cedric, Alex, Martin.
In fact, I've got a problem with this point of view because you are saying that striking on Libya in Syria is a legitimate thing. They are both dictators in the past. Our former president Sarkozy says, as a dictator we can strike. And a lot of countries agree with him, but it was on personal purpose. And it's very difficult, in fact, to see where is the forgery, where is the real need. When you decide to strike at this kind of country, you can push more problems, in fact, with forces. In fact, we need to educate, to provide some help, really. But forces, in fact, at the end, you may kill people, and every time you kill people, they want revenge. And this is not a good thing, because at one point they will agree together, both sides, to say they are the enemy. And when we want to help, in fact, we have a backfire.
I'll allow reaction, and then Alex, Marcel, Clement, and Anticon.
Just a technical comment. This discussion started from stabilizing a fragile state. For obvious reason, Libya was a fragile state in some sense. So in fact, this wording, which is in the program, actually prohibits an intervention of kind like Sarkozy did. So like, just don't mix in some strawmans.
Okay, Alex.
Yes, this is a very hard question, and one example you may learn about this was Rwanda. And if you know the story, what happens in Rwanda, there is not really a solution for such a problem. And we have to work on it, yes, but I don't think we can have made a real good point on such situations here in the CEP. But what we should be include at the level of diplomacy is something what we also have in the German program, that diplomacy should not only record on the national interest of Europe or on the European interest, it also should consider the interest of the others. And this is a very, very big point, because often you see diplomacy that only our interests are involved, and when the other interests are not really respected, then it came to such destabilizing situation.
Marcel?
Yes, I think we cannot really define what we are going to do in a certain situation, because these situations are just unpredictable, and anything can really happen. So this should be probably quite general, and should have basically 2 points. One is we care about the outside world as well, not only about us. And the second point is it's even in our interest actually to care about them, which you can then see in the future, like you can prevent things that you can see in the future, like migration crisis and stuff like that. Because when you just neglect all these problems that are outside, they are going to backfire on you on it anyway, right? So that I think should be kind of the point of.
So it's in our interest to care about the interests of the others.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clement.
I would just have an idea about the international law. In this kind of text, we should just have a sentence to say European Union has to enforce the respect of the international treaties, just like the UN. In fact, stabilizing country doesn't appear because US pushes its interest, or Russia push its interest, and each country block the interest of each other. So just apply the spirit of international law, and it will be good. And it is the same for Libya. If France applies the spirit of the UN declaration, we never have the right to kill Gaddafi. So just apply the international law and just help other countries.
Anticon, thank you. Sorry. No, you weren't in the
I wasn't
debate.
in the
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I was dealing with agenda. Yeah. Okay, so any more comments to this? If not, I'm sorry we are jumping like that, but I just saw that the point 1.4 is again trade one. So yeah, switch your thoughts from defense and stuff like that to trade. Responsibility of international corporations. The European Union must make it possible to engage the legal responsibility of companies in the event of infringement of European environmental law for their actions on the territory of the Union, but also for their actions outside the territory of the EU, if in the latter the seat of their parent company is on the territory of the European Union.
That's so nicely imperialist.
No.
So, anyone want to comment on that or cross it out or highlight it?
Should it be on foreign policy?
Uh,
Yes.
Well, in the trade affairs, yeah.
Better trade.
Yeah, we kind of jumped because of the point 1.3 suddenly of X resolution inside trades. Okay, if there are no comments and we want to implement it, then we'll leave it like that. Okay, Cedric?
In fact, I have a PDF of the draft, and international trade policy is a subtopic of foreign affairs and is a 1.2 point. And we are on the 1.3 and 1.4.
We are adding.
So they are subtopic of foreign affairs, not subtopics of trade policies.
Ah, okay.
So in fact, your complaint is a good complaint. It's already taken in account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We have 8 minutes, and there's the all-CEEP Defense Policy Program. I wonder whether we should go through it as a whole or leave it for the CEEP evaluation at the end. I don't know if we are able to do this in 8 minutes or 15 maybe if I give us more time. Alex, you want to comment on the proceedings?
Yes, I think we have to discuss this special whether or not there is a common European defense policy. Yes, this is in discussion in that moment in the European Union. I say the sentence about the European Armed Force, which was there. I think it should be really important, also for defense policy, because it's more or less our position also we have in the German Party. Before we speak about the founding of the European Armed Forces, and I don't think we are in the position to speak about European Armed Forces, but we have to install this that the armed forces should be controlled by the European Parliament.
Okay, Miklos?
Just a comment. There is something which is called PESCO, Permanent Structure Cooperation, which started like last year. And the idea is that there are common projects to improve defense cooperation within Europe. There is also a new initiative which was actually taken only by some countries, not all of them. I think Germany is part of that, but I'm not sure at that point. I think there are like 10 countries to form some sort of European intervention group. So I would not say before the founding of the European Armed Forces, because stuff like that is already happening. So from my perspective, there should be written the common European defense activity should be put under Parliament control, because it's already happening and we should take control.
Very good.
Can minutes takers include it, please? It's okay. Anyone? Okay, Okay, so we kind of started discussing the points, but that wasn't the point of my question.
Let's do it really fast.
Okay, so if we can do it really fast, we can do it. So do you want to add something more about the European Armed Force?
Change it. Please change it to what Mikuláš.
Yeah.
Mikuláš, can you write your?
Oh, can you write it down, Mikuláš? Please.
Yeah, I will write.
Okay, then there's two paragraphs on technologies, artificial intelligence and cyber defense. Oh, and use of weapons, but yeah, that's also technology, so weapons are. So AI.
I don't understand this mentioned that in is where we are?
Sorry?
We are here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand this sentence. To allow autonomy of decision and the life of a living person.
Autonomous weapons. So, an artificial intelligence take the decision to kill a target.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alex?
But this is a very crucial point. Perhaps you can make the sentence better understandable.
Maybe.
Okay, so to do, please
rephrase.
Rephrase it.
Yeah, rephrase. What we to do is that this digital weapons are prohibited.
To
so
be
we
more
have
understandable.
ABCD weapons. Yes, atom, biological, cyber, and digital weapons should be prohibited.
Yeah, so maybe also either you can write it down, Alex, or someone is taker this proposal also, so that we are really make it efficient. Sorry, I'm Mikuláš, Marcel. I don't know if anyone else.
I may just comment. I think it is hard to prevent research of artificial intelligence which would have control over deadly weapons, because it's not really like you are like researching artificial intelligence with the purpose to have deadly weapon, and artificial intelligence with the purpose not having deadly weapons, because it's mixing. Like you will make the decision whether it is autonomous mostly at the end of the process. So I think you cannot prohibit the research, but what you can is to prohibit using or equipping it by deadly weapons with no human control, and that should be done.
Yeah,
that is meant.
I had a similar comment, and maybe I would make it a little broader. I'm not sure if we need to use the term artificial intelligence. Even like we just don't want any kind of machine that would decide without human intervention that target should be killed. Basically.
So we include mines in that as well.
Mines.
Cedric?
What? Like mines?
There is no human deciding if it should explode or not.
There is one.
Well, there's one stepping
because
on
it explodes every time. Like that's not a decision. Right? The mind does not make a decision.
Well, there is no artificial intelligence, therefore.
Maybe we shouldn't allow mines.
But I think
well, I would ban all the
personal mines are already prohibited, aren't they?
Prohibited? I think it's already.
Because it's untargeted.
But not the anti-vehicles mine. I think only the personal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And imagine if you create a mine that you can actually communicate with and say, do not explode. And it's not intelligence in that sense that it knows that the target is a friendly one. But
I think that exists already.
Remotely controlled explosives, there are.
Yeah, but then you have a human sitting, pushing the button if it's remotely controlled. Then remotely controlled. But if it's automatically controlled, I don't know. I mean, I'm just, where do we draw the line of a weapon that is automated?
I think the decision to kill should be always made by man.
I think the decision is the,
people.
The decision is, I think, the word, because if you have an automatic mechanism, that's not a decision. Decision is that you have to evaluate.
Evaluate data to perform.
That's, I think, the
That's a decision.
Okay, Cedric was
mind
first,
is
then
not a
John.
decision, in my understanding.
Who's that? Besides Paul.
Non-mine is already forbid.
Let's forget mine.
Yeah, personal.
In fact, I agree about decision is for artificial intelligence, but there is in the bracket associated algorithms. In fact, algorithms that doesn't make decision; they are just algorithm. But that's why I agree for the rephrase phase of the sentence. But this is the whole process. Artificial decision or algorithm must be banned on this purpose.
Okay, John.
What if artificial intelligence is used to prevent human errors or errors of human decisions? No, for instance, to avoid killing civilian when the men try to attack some weapons. So I mean that's very general statement. I think it's a little tricky. Say because it's like a car, no? You have a car and if the car stops when a person crosses the street, that's good, no? And even if it's not your decision, no,
I think it's perfectly fine to have a system which somehow resolves which targets are military and protects the civilian targets. But as previously said, there should be the mechanism to allow the fire should be up to human.
I agree, but then the sentence is not allow any research on artificial intelligence.
I think we tried out research. Yeah. I think research is
Marcel, Alex, Cedric.
I just wanted to say to decide not to kill someone is different from to decide to kill someone, right? So if you have an artificial intelligence, as you said, protecting from human errors, so that someone erroneously kills non-military targets, citizens, then it's different from what we're discussing, because we're discussing that the artificial intelligence decides on its own to kill anyone.
Yeah. Alex, Cedric, and please let's make it faster.
Yeah. Okay, but systems to provide humans to kill accidentally people are not meant. For example, you know that this Malaysian airline flight was shot in Ukraine was misusing a system which in general should be registered if it's a civil aircraft or not, but people don't hear on this automatic system. Only example, yeah. But what we mean, and this is really clear, that no human interferes in this action, and only artificial intelligence will decide, and this is not. And this is that's what we want to prevent.
Cedric? Sorry, Miklas. Cedric Miklas.
In fact, I will use a paraphrase. The power to kill is also the power to let people live. If you can make in fact, there is a possibility when you have this kind of decision to reverse by some learning and so on in artificial intelligence to propose enemies, allies, and so on, and make some mistakes. In fact, allowing such algorithms or artificial intelligence saying, "Be careful, this is not a target." It may be very useful, I agree on that, but this is the human is the last call. if the human wants to fire, it may be a very good reason to fire on a target that the IA say not fire, because maybe the
that's all it is.
Nicolas?
May I, Alexander, ask you? You said ABCD weapons should be prohibited. Could you specify for the record what do you mean by digital weapons?
Yes, it is only a formulation which everybody maybe understand. Digital, you have to define digital weapons in that kind that they are weapons who fulfill this criteria to fight autonomously without human decisions. Yes. Or without the possibility that humans can be stop the process or influence.
Robocop version 1.
Yes. But I think we are all perfectly fine with some tools like Metasploit to let's say find vulnerabilities in someone computers and
and SCADA when you are making weapon to corrupt command and control of nuclear power plants, for example. This is digital also. You can make a virus to just break control command of nuclear power plant and make some cheats.
This also should be also included. So you have to think about a list. What should be the digital weapons that you will want to prohibit?
Because
this is quite broad. This is a longer discussion.
Yeah,
I think
we don't have time for that.
It could happen that there are some members of pirate parties which accidentally somehow look in some servers of someone else, and maybe
accidentally.
Accidentally, yeah. I think we should avoid hypocrisy in our election program.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, we have some material for the working group to work on more, so I'll end this here about the AI. Cyber defense and use of weapons are the last paragraphs. Yeah. So I ask you to kindly read it. I think it would be faster. And tell me if you have any comments. Cyber defense and use of weapons.
May I have a comment?
Yes, Antigone.
Maybe on cyberwar, it's most of the cyber attack actually are not made by state, so it's most of the time private.
Okay, he doesn't need to speak. It's clear.
Yeah, shortest comment in history.
I didn't say there is no cyber attack from state. I say when you look at the cyber attack, the most part of them are from private enterprise to private enterprise, and they are more targeting industrial spying. Most of them.
I'm afraid that's a generalization we cannot make.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, please raise your hands if you want to step into Nikolai.
I would not object to this claim because I think it's very common practice that some state somehow hire criminals to do the attacks. So the question is it the state acting or the criminals acting when they are sponsored by the state?
Yeah.
The states are the criminals.
And how you prove that? And so are international trade agreements, trade agreement, but agreements, right tools? It's an open question.
And hardly someone has statistics on that. Or do you?
I think the Germans have.
So I have
Marcel?
I have a request if this paragraph can be presented and explained by the working group. Like
Cedric?
it seems to be quite complicated for me to read it and understand.
Well, it's actually from the old CEEP, as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Cedric, Magnus.
I was part of that group. In fact, I made some lecture of it, and this was not one that have problems. This is the first sentence is the declaration. The second one, in fact, is our point of view of cyber war and cyber weapon uses by the European states, other countries, or other companies, or other criminal organizations, and so on, can do what they want with that. But the EU must, in fact, have a policy of the use of this kind of weapon. This is the main statement, in fact.
Okay, Magnus.
So
Sorry.
The first sentence actually means what this quite cryptic for me.
In fact, this is the point that are love. It's that there is problems about the reliability of who is in command when there are cyber attacks. In fact, this is Chinese people, only Chinese people, Russians, Americans, Google, Facebook, zombie team of computers, sellers of data brokers, and so on. It's very difficult to say if there is states, company, in fact, some companies have power states, in fact, in the day basis. So it's difficult to claiming liability about that. But as a state, we need to have a clear policy with it.
Magnus?
Yeah. I don't know about which is the chicken and which is the hen right here, but I realized, or I reckoned the sentences, and it's really close to our program that we have locally in Sweden. Ours is a little bit more spelled out, a little bit more text around this, but in general, at least our intention with our program is that we do not want the government specifically to use weaknesses of our systems that we have, our civilian systems, just to get an edge on their opponents or whatever they are trying to attack. But when it comes to cyber war, it's really a complicated situation because there are multiple different levels of forces in action. So we can't really say that it's just states or companies, or it could be a lot of different things.
Flash, Cedric, Marcel?
I maybe disagree because I think all the states should have a capacity for forensic control even though their IT structure was attacked. And in general, if you are expert in that area, you probably not only know how to find whether your system was attacked, but you also know how to do the attack. So it's necessarily the side effect of building defensive capacity that you have also an offensive capacity. Would like to disagree with you because, of course, it is hard for a state to prove that it was attacked by some other state. But in a democratic state, or in the states with a rule of law, you can always set some sort of requests on civil servants and other entities which are cooperating with the government. For example, in current European states, it's pretty common that the intelligence services should not serve as a police they are allowed to collect data, but they are not allowed to arrest citizens, because this would be very dangerous. And as well as they are not allowed to arrest citizens, they should be not allowed to hack computer systems and also computer systems of other countries unless there is a clear declaration of war. In that case, I would have no problem with that.
Oh.
Cedric?
In fact, I agree with this point. We need to see that cyber weapons, we use cyber as usual keyword, but they are weapons, and they must be used by the states at the same level as physical weapons. So I totally agree. If you want to make a great cyber attack, you need to make a declaration of war. And as the parade is continuing, we can see that when we are discussing about arms selling, weapon selling, and so on, there is two or more levels of this kind, with the states-to-states sales and states-to people, to citizens selling. And in fact, having citizen or enterprise cyber attacks is not in the domain of the states to make a statement. Of course, it's illegal, but we can't say, oh, they are allowed to do so because of this is a state level discussion, and we are not discussing about enterprise cyber attack or local group cyber attacks.
Okay, Marcel?
Yeah, on a similar note, maybe. So we use the word cyber war, which means like it's a type of war, and in even people can be killed as a result of cyber war. To that point, so we're talking about something like really dangerous. So we could treat it as a weapon if we use anything like that. And to the point that Magnus had, I think, but we might want to address something that we have seen in the United States and NSA, which is that if you know about an exploit, then there's a question like, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to use it for your own benefit, like now you are able to hack into Chinese government computers, or do you want to fix that problem? Because we're currently living in a world that the software is kind of like generic and shared across the globe. So for most of these attacks can be used on basically anything, and even your own citizen, which means if there is a security vulnerability in OpenSSL for 3 years and you're misusing that vulnerability against possibly an enemy, that also means that anyone can use the same vulnerability against people. And I think the principle here should be that security first, which means we're going to secure these pieces of software. We're not going to exploit them and pretend that the problem is not there, and we're misusing the vulnerability.
Magnus?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to agree with you because what we need to think about, I mean, we're talking state-wise now. It's not companies, it's states. So when what is the purpose of the state? It's about protecting from internal and external threats. That is pretty much the basics of a state. And if the state itself starts to present them as a threat for the internal, a threat for the people, then we have an issue. And I would say that, like you said, security first. And I don't mind saying that the state, whenever they find, and on any level, find a weakness like Heartbleed that you were talking about, if they find it, they should report it. And that should be the normal procedure. And of course, as soon as they have reported it, they can use it for as much as they like. But the importance is saying that, okay, we have a problem, it will affect our citizens, please fix it. And meanwhile, we're going to use it. That's okay. But it's really important that they actually do not say, this is not an issue, we have an extra edge over whatever we want to hack into, so we're not going to tell anyone about this. This is the general issue with like FRA and NSA and all these intelligence organizations that we have in the world, that they are actually actively collecting weaknesses that they can use in their daily operation. And this is not acceptable as a state, because it leaves all their citizens vulnerable in one way or another. And their first issue should be safety of their people. Yes, it just happens that the safety of their people will also be the safety of all the other people that are using the software.
Mikuláš, Marcel?
I think we should discuss what kind of exploit it is, because when we are talking about Heartbleed, obviously everyone is using OpenSSL, so it should be reported. On the other hand, if someone finds a vulnerability in, let's say, I don't know, Chinese, Russian, American nuclear racket system, which could be used to disable these weapons in case of nuclear war, I think it's pretty fine to keep it and to use it in that case when there is a situation when half of the mankind could die just because of these weapons.
Technical Magnus, then Marcel?
Yeah, of course, if it's publicly available software that the citizens or the civil part of society is using, then it should be reported, absolutely.
It's the difference between proprietary and open source.
Yeah. Not just open source.
Not really. Even Microsoft Windows is not open source, but if the collective, sorry, another topic. Intelligence agency discovers a problem in Microsoft Windows so that they can hack, so that anyone can hack into people's computers, that should be reported and fixed.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter if it's proprietary or so. I think the publicly accessible or is
available.
maybe kind of that wording, but that's.
Yeah, can we wrap this debate?
I had another point to make. Before.
That's not wrapping.
I had another point to make before we jumped into this, which I actually forgot what it was. But I would be careful with saying we would like. It is fine to keep that vulnerability and use it in case of like when we want to disable. I don't know, the Chinese or whoever to fire a nuclear weapon, because usually these types of vulnerabilities work that you can use it both ways. So you effectively leave it vulnerable to anyone, to fire the weapon. But I would be careful with such statements.
True. At least you should not have the policy to prohibit keeping such an exploit. But of course, if you know that there is an option to use it to fire it, obviously you should say it to those who own that.
Okay, is this the wrapment I asked for?
I just recalled what was my point that I wanted to make is it is important to understand that this is a really crucial political decision that can be only solved on political level, because many people, especially among pirates and like technology geeks, think that this can be solved on a technical level. Like we'll secure our systems, we develop our whatever, just not going to work ever. The great example is Heartbleed, because if you have like, I don't know, 5 core engineers for OpenSSL who actually develop this very complicated algorithms and very complicated library, and then you have on the other hand NSA who can employ like 50 engineers to look for a vulnerability and then misuse it, you are not going to solve a problem on a technical level. This is a problem that can only be solved on a political level, and that's why I think it should be in our statement in the program. Because that's not the society we want to live in, like hiding and fighting against our own state and intelligence agencies is not the world we want to live in.
Only sure.
Yeah, no,
only. This is
we
the
should
end.
have the sentence, there are no technical solutions for social problems.
Okay. So, 3 more minutes for the last paragraph, use of weapons. It's about striving for more stringent regulation of the world arms trade and banning arms exports to the conflict areas. Also that the European Parliament should give its agreement for any weapons exportation, and we refuse to use mercenaries and unmarked regular army warriors. So.
Yeah, good, done.
Okay, that means I can give you 3 minutes break if you want, or we can go to the next point, because at 2 o'clock, that means in 1 hour will be lunch, so it's up to you whether you want 3 minutes break now or we'll wait for. Okay. So
can I ask? I'm going to call to book the restaurant for lunch, and I wanted to ask you. We have 3 choices. One is like an Italian restaurant, the other one is a Marrakesh restaurant, and the other one is a Chilean restaurant, but they do like the daily menu, it's local cuisine. So if you can give me some input and then I call. Any preference? Italian, Marrakesh?
You choose, because
I'm not coming to it, I have my...
Exactly, but you choose.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Nobody cares about anything.
No, we will not, make a
or we can discuss it.
Well,
for
somewhere
like
where they
an
have
hour.
more vegetarian options than yesterday.
How far is it?
Really,
Okay, yeah, I actually didn't know yesterday, so we have to I will check it out. No, io purtroppo mi ho portato lì nel suo casa.
Yeah, we need to choose.
Vale. Quals són? Tu te'n vas, aquests 3? Next point is taxes.
We don't technology is for some kind of magic. So I use living and killer things. It's about the spectral adjustment, the fruits, in fact. Inspector M, the chief of foreign security policy,
is not licensed not to kill. And this is my main purpose in my phrase. So why do you laugh about my?
Because you made a comment about like that the decision not to use a weapon could actually cause someone's death. And I somehow remind the previous discussion about the intervention against the dictator, because obviously a dictator is a guy who has a weapon and can kill someone, and obviously does it very often. So not killing him is actually a decision to leave his victims die. So like you somehow contradicted your previous position.
No, in fact, it was a question, an open question, without my opinion about kill or not to kill dictator. I only ask if when you are taking this kind of point of view, this is legitimate to kill or to send forces. This is not my opinion to intervene or not. This is just, in fact, a consequence that we must see when we are stating some things.
Yes, but like applied on the previous discussions, you have to see the consequences. Was just
yes.
But I think when we discussed an artificial intelligence that that, let's say, does not allow you to make a mistake to shoot a civilian. I wasn't like thinking about, you know, you pull the trigger and it doesn't do anything, right? Like
just a message.
Maybe
you have to check again to see.
I can perfectly agree that there are some artificial intelligence which are more dumb compared to former French president. And in that case, well, it's different discussion.
Well, I think this idea of not letting artificial intelligence decide is questionable, because it may decide maybe better than many people I know.
Maybe someone yes.
So it depends. It is moral. No, we are.
But the point is,
to kill, no?
but the point is,
the
point is, once the artificial intelligence is assistance, then it's fine. But when it's the decision maker, then that's a problem, right?
In fact, it's in which you want to live in. Are you your own master, or are you a kind of master? Not a robot one, but a mechanical one. And it's some people can agree to live under machines decision because they are not harmless and so on. But this is a very ethical and philosophical point of view that we must discuss, and not in a 1 hour discussion. In fact, that without deciding to go to this world, we need in fact to prevent to go into it by accident.
Yeah.
But imagine a case, you are in charge of killing a big terrorist, and then you have in at the field level you have machine, artificial intelligence, and a soldier, and you have a photograph that all of them have, and they should say you have to tell them, if you see this guy, shoot him. So would you necessarily prefer a man to take this decision when you know that the machine would be much more likely not to kill an innocent? Well, okay, but why? I don't know why.
Responsibility.
I see a little religious.
Responsibility. In fact, with machines, there is no possibility to say one people.
We'll begin in
someone make a decision
Okay.
is responsible for this decision. It may be a mistake, it may be a mistake in both cases and so on, but against who can you be angry or searching a solution if it's not a person?
It's a person that tells the machine to shoot in these conditions.
Yes,
No,
if it's a person, machine, then it's fine.
Yeah, that's fine, no? But I don't see why you cannot have under your command artificial intelligence machine that will make a better choice, according to your decision, and will have less mistakes. So,
well,
so
if
that's
there
why I
is,
don't see it
if
so
there
absolute.
if there is an artificial intelligence, then it means this guy is terrorist identified based on basic definitions, 99.9% certainty. You decide to fire or not. It's fine. If
You
it
decide
takes the
to
decision
you the person.
As the person, yeah.
Okay.
Then it's fine. If just the AI provides you the additional information for your decision, but you have to do the decision. Yeah. Because otherwise we are in deep mess. Yeah.
Well, but if you take the decision and say, well, you find this guy, because you will pass just twice, you have
we
no
have to be
time
more.
to take the real decision.
Meeting.
Nice.
Boring.
Another thing,
Boring.
as a
Yeah,
human,
Texas, sorry, they are boring.
they're saying that targeting this civilian target is
So, shall I
because
move it? I place it like in the end
Yeah, absolutely.
of the text.
I did not see that
No, I think it's okay.
That's good.
We'll just tell everyone
You can use it
the
now.
line.
Okay.
You know, I'm not sure if you know that
the information is wrong.
objects, but they can be exchanged for other objects. Yeah.
And
They're accepted in
you take the chance to terminate
cool.
or, for example,
even
Alright. I did not know.
when you're in Finland,
This is new to me.
Cedric.
And not in Sweden.
No, this is exactly.
We can begin without them. I asked them outside. Cedric, John, you are actually the one who will speak now, so because I know you have to go, so we are beginning Texas. Please, can you show me what's the line? John's proposal is 1,055. We will begin from that line because John has to leave earlier, and this is his. So, John, can you it's your.
No, okay. Basically, the point is, well, as you probably know, I participated in the last program in Athens and before, and now I am recently working more with ATTAC, and I don't know if you are aware of what ATTAC is.
No, not everybody.
No, not everybody. Well, ATTAC is an association that was founded about 20 years ago, initially in France, and is a little bit against the financial, how do you call it, the financial globalization and increasing power of the financial sector over all the economy and the people. And then, for instance, they promoted the Tobin tax and these kinds of things. And now we are in a kind of movement, initiatives, in taking account that is the 10 years of the crisis, to really focus the attention of many organizations. We are trying to coordinate many organizations at European level. And the slogan and also the objective is taking control, citizens to take control of finances. So the idea is this has become a monster, that they have their own, they are not, at the service of the citizens, certainly not, but not even of the real productive economy. And then there is several activities that will be done, but I think that it would make sense maybe to have some exchange of ideas, because I think that both ATTAC and Pirates have similar thinking on that level, so it would make sense to find some synergies. Type of things that we are trying to promote this coordination of taxes across countries, so that otherwise all countries will try to lower taxes so that they attract the companies, and then at the end they will have no possibilities of financing the social system, the countries, because the taxes will be very low. Then try to discourage all type of speculative operations and with financial assets, but also with goods. And this the Tobin type of tax would be one of these tools, but not the only one. Then certainly there's the idea, which has been going forth and back, of separating commercial from industrial banking activities. So we say, okay, banking activities that give you a mortgage or a loan to a company is fine, but if they start buying and selling quickly assets, this brings financial instability. Then also to promote a public, ethical and democratically controlled banking system, etc. Introduce the global tax on financial transactions, also called Tobin tax, and also to continue and to take seriously the fight against tax havens, the tax paradises they are called as well, which is a kind of joke what the European Union is doing about this. They had a list and now it's coming down, and we are trying to promote a kind of petition against tax haven at European level. And then also there is a new area, which this is still not clear to me and to many people, but there are proposals to limit the private banks' ability to create money, which is what they do now, and say, okay, let's not to have a fraction of what the assets in reserves, but let only the central bank create money. And so some people think that there will be less instability and less risk of big banks having to be rescued, etc. So this is more or less the basic ideas that we are discussing, and I don't know, as I feel part of the two organizations, I will be happy to extend it, to discuss it in some group or whatever you think it's useful. Should I also discuss on the patent point?
No, not now. Okay. But maybe, yeah, that's actually, it's unfortunate that it has to go because we were going to discuss this later, so I don't know the measures for the patents, but maybe I can explain that.
Yeah, well, definitely first we should discuss this, if there are any questions on you concerning this. Well, we are discussing the points. I'm not an expert in any of this. I just can say for the Czech Pirates that especially the first point we totally agree, because it's actually in our proposal also, the whole race to the bottom stuff. So that's okay with me. As for the others, I can just from my point of view say that I pretty much might agree. Yeah, it sounds all good. Maybe I just kind of don't understand, but that's because I'm not really economically educated person. I know sad. The last point, I don't really know what to.
The creating money thing.
The analyzing the proposal to limit the ability of private banks to create money by maintaining only a fraction of the deposits in cash and liquid assets. Yeah, maybe.
The idea is that a bank is always in a state that can, ¿cómo se llama? Suspensión de pagos.
Like bankruptcy, you mean?
No, it's not bankruptcy. If all the people that has an account on a bank, they get together and ask for the money does not have the liquidity, because it is invested in loans, So this brings an stability to the system.
Suspension of payment.
Suspension of payments. Yep. So the banking system, the private banking system, is in a permanent state of of going wrong. No? And also the amount of actual money that is works in economy is not a public decision, it's partly a private decision because the banks decide. No, we can bring some money to a bank, and then with this money, if you bring I don't know, no, 1,000 euros, the bank can give credit for say 1,000 euros. No, so with a small amount of real money.
Sorry, you said 1,000 euros can give a loan for 1,000 euros.
Sorry, no, for 10,000. 10,000. And there's some proposals in Switzerland to avoid this and say no, let's only a public central bank to decide how much money is in the economy.
This is Volgeld initiative.
Sorry?
Volgeld initiative.
Yeah. But this I am not saying to adopt it. No, I have still some doubts, but it seems interesting. So we are in our initiative. We think of studying it and considering maybe it should be tried somehow. I don't know.
Thank you. Exile, Marcel, Magnus, Alex.
Well, in front I would have first a question. Do we know about any pirate party who's against Tobin taxes?
So I think the Czech Pirate Party maybe would be torn apart by that point.
Okay.
So I think that's not what we can easily say for the Czech Pirates.
Okay. That was also your comment, or?
I don't.
Marcel is next.
No, it wasn't. It was just a reply to the question.
Okay, so Marcel.
Yeah. So I think it's rather controversial, and if we want to agree on a common program that like each pirate party participating in the European elections agree on, I think that we will have to drastically cut most of what is here in the proposal. That's my guess on what needs to be done. As Marketa said, the coordination of taxes to avoid competition. The Tobin tax, I think that's something that I'm afraid is something that we cannot easily agree on across the parties, and the limiting of private banks to actually create money by I think it's called fractional banking, or fractional banking. That's really controversial actually, because this is the main purpose of the banks as they are today. Well, yeah, that's the main basically point of the banks distributing money into the public using the system. And I'm not really sure that we have any kind of research that it's a good way to proceed to actually start limiting that, because it was kind of like created in the past because the previous system didn't really scale well. Yeah, that's pretty much at this point.
Magnus?
Yeah, I agree with Marcel that the Tobin tax is something that is really debatable. At least in Sweden, we do have people from both the left and the right side of the financial or taxation discussion. But I think that we are kind of not addressing the source here. Tax is a way for the state to provide the services that we have agreed upon, right? And one of the biggest issues that I would say with taxes is that they're not used in a efficient way, and many times it's used well, not as expected from the people. And I think to have some sort of writing saying that taxes should be used in a responsible way and not allow um, well, I don't know, you can call it leakage or whatever of common funds. I mean, this is our money that is being used on a common basis. And we want to really make sure that they are used in a good and responsible way. And as far as I can see in Sweden, many in power are referring to the tax money as their money, and they kind of say that, well, we spend our money in a way that we like or want to or see fit. And these need to realize that this is not their money, it's actually our money that we are giving them to help not only ourselves but also the people that can't afford those services otherwise. So I mean, maybe just put something like that in the general of taxes, that it should be somehow the focus should be to spend it on a efficient way, I think, because as a pirate or as a pirate organization we have so different thoughts about how to use the taxes, if it should be raised or lowered and stuff like that, because that's a general discussion when it comes to taxes, should it be raised or lowered, and we say let's use them efficiently and hopefully we can lower them and get the same services or even better services through digitalization and so on, and all that stuff.
Alex and Mikuláš?
Yes, at first I see that taxes and finance policy is mixed up here. I think you have to split it, and special the questions of monetary system, sustainable monetary system, and banking system are also not connected to finance policy, but also a separate topic. I don't think, especially for a sustainable monetary system, and the only thing we agree, or nearly everybody agrees, is that we need a sustainable monetary system. We haven't a sustainable monetary system, and the fractional banking has its problems, and at the moment the International Bank in Basel has tried to solve it with this Basel III treaty, which not goes to this Vollgeld, what's the English word, which was a proposal of Irving Fisher in the 1920s, so it's a very old proposal. But it goes to reform the fractional banking system. But we don't know what will be the success. Maybe we will see it in 5-10 years, yes. And the problem will occurring with the next finance crisis, and we are not really prepared for that. Yes. That things perhaps we can include in the program, but it's not necessary, and especially monetary system discussions in the German Pirate Party was very controversial, and it's in general a very controversial discussion. What's important for taxes, I think, is this point, coordination of taxes, and the EU and other international organizations should set up effective policy measures against tax havens, and also the Tobin tax perhaps are points we may include in the CEP. And,
well, we've heard that
yes,
BBC and
right.
Sweden.
It's actually not true.
Yeah, that was Mikuláš's point probably, but Swedish pirates already said that Tobin tax would be yeah.
Yes, depends, because it's also an official discussion, not only with pirates, it's a discussion on the European level. And I only would say I think Tobin taxes for the German file is also a point in the program. Good. It has also the effects to reduce a little bit problems of the banking system. Yes, had influence on that. Yes. But before we don't have it in practice, I don't think everybody can know what will happen when a Tobin tax is implemented.
Okay, Mikuláš, Marcel?
If I may just comment on the Tobin tax, so far I know our long-term party program does support it. It's not explicitly written as Tobin tax, but we are supporting taxing of financial transaction. And so far I know from the spokesman, he had this stance. And
Marcel is disappointed.
Official party position is official party position and should be recorded. And speaking about this fractional banking, I think there are currently regulation declaring something which is called capital adequacy, which somehow declares what is the minimum reserve for the bank to keep. And I think we should definitely strive for keeping this minimal reserve on a reasonable level, because one of the reasons was that those regulations which were for one of the reasons for the last financial crisis was that these regulations which were in the US were stepwise eased to the point when there were basically no minimal reserve, and then the financial crisis occurred. So we should keep it for the safety of our financial system.
Yes, but Basel III now says 8%.
Yeah, they pushed it from 3 to 8.
Yeah, which is fine. I don't know whether we should discuss if it should be like 12. I don't know, maybe. But that is very expert debate, and we have definitely no data for
yeah, just write down into the pad for the working group, you know, to evidence, fight evidence, and
only a short input, because we had a very interesting discussion with experts about that. And in fact, 8% or 12% will not make a real difference, because there are balance tricks to reach every of this without changing something in reality.
Okay. Then you have to change the other rules, how it is calculated.
Yes, it's very, very hard.
Marcel?
Yeah, so I stand corrected. Mikuláš is right. In our long-term program, there is taxing of new areas, and it says that we want to tax also untaxed areas currently, like tax havens, big corporations, transactions, financial and real estate speculations, prostitution, and drugs. So I had one comment, just to keep it in mind on the Tobin tax, which is it's gonna be quite difficult when you start thinking about other currency systems like Bitcoin and similar, like how to deal with that. But it's just comment on that. I would be careful about like the wording around financial speculations, or what is the current wording in there. If I may play the devil's advocate here for a while, one could argue that those financial, let's say, speculations also make the liquidity on the market and makes it more behave more. I don't know, like it balances the forces on the financial market, basically. That's the way I put it.
John?
These are the kind of arguments we're going to hear. So it's just.
Okay. No, I think that everyone is aware, or almost at least Attack is aware of all these financing issues are very complex and complicated. But on something you said about the link with taxes, and I think there is a link, because if as you see, if there is not enough taxes, and then you get into debt, and then there is a problem which goes back to the financial system, and it has also political consequences. Actually, one of the points that is also in this Attack initiative is trying to redefine what is how it's called ethical debt, because I think we feel that I don't know, the citizens should not pay with their taxes the debt that has been incurred because the bank, private bank is in court. So it's not so easy to separate everything because everything is linked. But certainly we see that there is a big problem. For instance, if we let this competition in lowering taxes, and we let the tax havens go on, I don't know where will the funds come from to finance the nice housing policies or this general income that we are so proud of trying to promote. That we find an Attack that we are going to have a problem, and it's the same with the Tobin tax. It's not clear who should collect it, with which purposes, etc. But the fact is that the big money is done now in this area. So the money is not so much by producing things and selling it even at a big profit. Selling is moving very quickly, money. And now there are machines, these artificial intelligence that you tell that are doing what the brokers did in the past. So it's this that we saw in the films, the people shouting, I buy, you sell. This doesn't exist anymore. And these are done by computers, by algorithms that make operations in nanoseconds. It's crazy. It's no one understands how this works exactly, and what are the consequences. And there is a feeling that there is, but there is a clear idea that we are at risk. That we are, being our lives are decided by algorithms that no one really controls. So that even if there is some uncertainty on some of the measures, I think there is much more uncertainty in leaving the system as it is now. Just because it has been going on for some years, you say, well, it's safer. The banks decide how far they could go in keeping some reserves. Anyway, it's not easy. I am not saying that this is a program that not even in Attack we are not sure of how to implement and how feasible. So we were more, my idea, I'm not speaking as Attack, this was a personal initiative. It would be good maybe to explore, because I think in order to try to promote these type of movements, the larger the amount of people and organizations is, the more likely is to have some success.
Marcel, Cedric?
Yeah, just a small comment. The high frequency trading is usually in milliseconds, not nanoseconds. Yeah. So, it doesn't matter. But the point is not in my point is not the current system is perfect, and it's a risk to change it. Well, it is, but that's not the point. The point is, we should create a program that we all parties participating in the elections agree on, and if we put too controversial stuff in there, then we put the goal in jeopardy. That's fine.
Okay, Cedric.
One thing about the Attack scenes, Attack is a French organization, a part of. And I just asked to the French pirates to make to try to make a meeting with Attack in France to have this kind of debate, because for me it's a very interesting point of view. And we have pirates that are also in Attack, in So we will see this point very carefully. And in my opinion about high trading frequency, we must see, in fact, that we are no more in a capitalism system, but in a financiarization system, that we are making money not on capital of industries, enterprise, but over time, and this is not real money. Banks, they are really over control. They are making big mistakes with that, in fact. Introducing taxes in this scope can make, in fact, the old machinery cool down, in fact, just a little bit. But as we say about weapons, there is no more human decisions in this kind of process. And as is weapon is bad, in money it's also bad. So, as I said earlier, we need to discuss with attack in France. It was much understandable for us. But yes, we will see carefully.
Okay, actually, there is also a kind of European network of attack. Actually, we got together about 2 months ago, and this program is somehow discussed, no, and more or less accepted. Not in all points, but in general points. But so attack is having a similar, development that we are trying to have the pirates. No, so trying to coordinate a little bit the messages and then the point.
Certainly, we can be on money like what Net is for networks and digital affairs.
Well, to further the discussion, I would now implement into the discussion the points from the working group. It written Czech Pirate, so I pretty much know the principle. He would like to, propose three main points, which is breakdown of the social contract, bottom races, and the issue of the digital economy. He actually didn't written down consolidated text like a proposal, but explanation why and general solutions for the problem, and he would expand on that if we were to decide that we want to solve this problem as pirates on the European level. So the first one, breakdown of the social contract, is about the fact that larger companies are taxing, outside of their countries. And I think we are actually, it's also part of the point, like it's the tax havens pretty much, right, a problem, but it's also interconnected with, generally the tax evasion. And he proposes a solution OECD BPS EU 8080. Sorry,
that one.
I'm not sure what exactly are the solutions, but maybe we should just discuss whether we also think it's a problem and we want to solve it on the EU level as pirates, and then the working group and whoever joins it can discuss the solutions. Or of course there can be also just something like a general provisions like pirates are against popular tax evasions and would like to implement tools against it or something like that, on what we agree. So what do you think about this first point? Exile?
In principle, I find it. I'm afraid it will be difficult to reach agreement between all pirate parties, In fact, taxes are a national issue and not a European issue. The European Union don't have the right to make their own taxes. A thing which I personally do not understand, because if I look for gasoline for a car, for example, each country gives a whole tax to gasoline, while gasoline for airplane is free. Why? Would be clearly a thing for the European Union to have taxes. The same thing Juan told us a minute. The big money, for example, in Tobin taxes and something like this, would be on a European level. Taxes in the national level for producing something are a very little percentage of the whole tax income.
Technical from Mikuláš, then Alex.
Just a technical comment. You are not the only one who does not understand why the EU should not have taxes. Also, the Commission does not understand that they are actively proposing proposals to give some EU taxes. So this struggle is already ongoing, and we should maybe decide which side we will take.
Alex and Denis.
Yeah, it's not complicated. There are European taxes. This was a transformation of the Binnenmarket that this taxes, which was all Tollabgaben, or what's the English word?
CO2 emissions.
Yeah, are now directly paid to the European household.
Yes.
So it's a small beginning, yes, and especially in the Commission, the discussion of what's the Tobin tax, rather than you have a Tobin tax, it makes only sense when we have on the European level. So, but this we can include in the program, and that's a point. And what harmonization of taxes is in the domain of the European Union. So we have levels for the Mehrwertsteuer, the
VAT.
Yeah, VAT. We have that level, so minimum and maximum, and we are discussing about also levels for other national taxes. But I think mainly the most taxes are on the national level now, and I don't see that the member states will give some of their taxes to the European level.
Well, yeah, that's not what this point is about, actually.
Very good idea, because in that moment the member states pay fees to the and get fees back. It would be better to replace these fees through taxes that go directly to the European household.
Okay. Well, this point is about keeping the money in the national states, because it's about tax avoidance. And one technical, the ATAD is anti-tax avoidance directive. So I think what he meant by proposal is that we agree on, like here and in the working group, that we don't want the states, the companies avoid taxation, and then we support this directive because it's in the European Commission, but I think it didn't pass through yet, but we will somehow support it. And as for the OECD BEPS, it's a base erosion and profit shifting, and it's about the tax avoidance strategies and the fight on the OECD level against it. So it's a question whether we want to actually, support these types of activities to, avoid the tax avoidance. I don't know. Sorry. So do we? Well, I think it's obvious that yes, but maybe there might be some.
Sorry, could you repeat what was the base erosion and profit shifting doing?
It refers to tax avoidance strategies that exploit gaps and mismatches in tax rules. So it's on Google. So
okay, it's very hard to discuss these topics.
Let me Google that for you.
It's just directive. The explanation is above, And these proposals, ATAD and BEPS, are something that promotes the explanation above. Yes, Magnus?
I think that on this point, I think we can agree that avoiding tax avoidance is a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so of course I think that we can agree on that level. How is possibly not something you can totally agree on, but mostly because at least I'm not sufficient to say which is good or not.
Yeah, so there should be just a general proposition like we are against avoiding the tax avoidance.
Yes, yeah, something like that. Yeah, just to give us some sort of position in this question. I think that in general it's quite a humane position, saying that no, we shouldn't, try to avoid paying taxes in the sense that it erodes our social security systems.
Yeah, and principle of solidarity.
Yeah, all those reasons why we have these systems. So I think that is a good target to go for. Maybe not aim for exact implementations of how to do it.
Yeah, I can agree with that, so that it's most consensual.
It's easier to agree upon as well. I would hear someone say, no, we should have tax avoidance, and argue for that. Please do that.
And we put it into the program.
But only for large companies.
Put it into the program in wording like we prevent political forces to avoiding tax avoidance or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's right down into the pad, and the working group can implement it. Okay, in that case, the second point is something we actually discussed already, is the racing to the bottom. And I think we all agree that it's also something we want to implement. Again, do we want to go somehow into detail? For example, there's proposed solution CCCTB, which I will Google immediately. CCCTB is Common Consolidated Corporate Tax Base.
Wait, I'll write it here in the web.
Common Consolidated Corporate Tax Base. It's again in European Commission right now. It's from 2016. It's a proposal for common tax scheme for the European Union. And, well, yeah, the question is, we agreed on racing to the bottom, so we should somehow implement it. The question is whether we want to, again, go into the detail with this proposal, saying that we'll support it in the EP or something like that. Do we? I know, hard question, because we don't know what's in it, but...
Have to discuss it in the working
group.
The
working group.
Yeah, well, the working group suggests we do it, but...
But with this,
we
don't have enough information to do this right, like in 5 minutes, you know. It's something you have to read, and I mean, if we had some kind of summary or something.
Yeah, it's good to know we are against the racing to the bottom for starters.
Yeah, exactly. Just start to agree on the principles. Like, we are against it, or are we for it, or do we don't care? I
think we can, like, well, this is a question. Should there be a common way for the European states, or common way how to calculate the tax base so that it is somehow interoperable? You know, like, I think we have a reason to support the interoperability between the tax systems of member states. So it makes sense to me, and I think it does not violate the principle of subsidiarity. So parties could and should support it. But yeah. the data implementation will be.
Oh, sorry, I don't know which one of you prefers Cedric, right? So Cedric, John.
In fact, it's what I said yesterday about we are competing against ourselves. It's kind of things. In fact, we can see, I will take an example. Microsoft is on Ireland, and the French Microsoft is making some deficits each year because it's selling its profits to Ireland, and there is no tax on Microsoft in France. But they are selling a system to our defense. So we are taxed, and there is no tax on this case. And Ireland is part of the EU, and in this case, it's our enemy inside the Europe. It's not we must be further than that. And this point, in fact, is showing that we have this kind of problem.
Okay, John?
Yeah. Well, I think the sequence should be, do we want, as apparently yesterday was suggested, to have some EU social policy? And in which I think I would say yes, no, because this gives a sense of citizenship, etc. No, for instance, in the UK, they say that the National Health Service has helped to create a sense of citizenship, blah blah. If we agree that that should be some, no, but some social policies could be European, then we need a larger budget, EU budget. And then if we need a larger budget, are we going to fund it from contributions from the states with independent taxing systems, or we think about a kind of European tax? I don't know, no? Which is it's collected directly from companies or from transactions or from the people or whatever, no? So I think this is a sequence. If we want some European welfare state, not to take all the welfare state at European level, but some part of it that we think the subsidiarity would make sense, then how much it is and how should we fund it, with what kind of final sources.
I think
Okay.
we agree.
Yeah, that's again a good discussion for the working group. And the last point from the working group is digital economy. The problem is that the legal order cannot respond to changing premises of the world. Internet, such as global cross-border borderless network with the current legal system, is poorly regulated. It opens previously unimaginable possibilities. The services are a material counter-performance. So, legal persons. Yeah, it's about the territorial principle. Sorry. I will read the rest of it.
Yes. I actually know what's going on here because I was referee on this proposal in our committee, and yeah, it's an idea of taxation of digital services. It works that way that the companies which have a certain amount of user in a certain area are considered to have there something which is called like digital residency, and based on this digital residency they are supposed to pay some special tax in that area. The Commission's proposal was actually not really perfect because they set the same number of users for all the countries. So you are expected to have 100,000 of users, which is easy in Germany, but maybe a bit hard in, for example, Estonia or Malta. There are some other flaws of that type, but in general, I think it's a way how do they tackle this problem, and it's a way. It has to be improved, but it's a way.
Marielle, do you want to add something? Or... Oh no, you are doing the minutes. I see. Okay. So based on what Mikuláš said, do you think it's passable through other parties?
I mean, if it has problems, maybe we shouldn't directly support the directive, but maybe say that we support something similar to that.
Yeah.
Yes. This was kind of communication, which will now be discussed, and the final form will be found later. So, but in general, what is the principle is that, like, if you have some users somewhere, you are obliged to pay taxes over there, which I think in the context of internet and services like, say, Facebook or Uber or something like that makes sense.
Yes.
And it's our topic, like.
Yes.
Who else will cover it? Magnus?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about this change that was made some time ago regarding where to tax things sold on internet, because it was like if you bought it from one place you paid that taxes, and then everything changed. It was where you are when you're buying it, or where you live when you're buying it. It switched over to that instead, and I see that this could kind of end up in that kind of discussion as well, and it will complicate for anyone selling digital services. Once again, it complicates it because you need to know where the people you're selling to is or lives, and also it's kind of complicated even for the buyer sometimes to know what rules to apply in this situation and stuff like that. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there and see what happens.
Yep.
Yeah,
the solution proposed by the Commission for this problem was that actually they hard-coded. They claim that your customer is can be positioned based on the IP address, which of course is technically not correct, but it's a way how to define where your customer is.
All right, so VPN services will be really important in the future.
I think if you are a customer of an online platform, you don't really care which country will the online platform will pay taxes for your particular connection. You have much more important things to think about rather than how to tweak the tax system of some countries, and your contribution is very small, so I don't think it's a problem. And just a comment on this. This was not about like e-shops and stuff like that. It was targeting the type of services which works like a market, like connecting buyers and sellers of different type. It can be like loans of banks or taxi drivers and stuff like that. So Uber and those peer-to-peer bankings and those type of services.
Spotify kind of thing? No.
Spotify is not, I think, that type of service.
You're saying the record industry is connected to the users through Spotify.
Yeah, okay, then maybe. I'm not that much.
No.
Or how it actually works.
Okay, Marcel, Alex.
So is it for companies that are somehow legally based or attached to the European Union? They have a legal entity in the European Union?
Well, that's the cowboy attitude which the EU Commission takes. They actually claim that even a company which is registered in the US will be obliged to fulfill this or to pay this tax because they have kind of digital residency because they have users here.
Yeah, that's fine, but they don't pay. What do you do? You block them?
Well, the thing is that there are kind of like payment systems. Like usually, if you pay for advertisement or you pay fees to the digital platform, you need something like a credit card in some bank. And like the governments, they have certain degree of control over the banks. So I expect that they will force Facebook or whoever to do it because otherwise they could somehow block them the payments.
Okay, Alex?
And if it's Bitcoin?
Yes, this discussion missing some fundamental points because taxes have different reasons. I think the main reason is the state needs money. Yes. And this is true. Yes, you have to do a lot of things. Yes, and the money has to come from somewhere. But the second reason is also, and in German taxes are Steuern, and Steuern in English is to steer. So to have influence on processes. Yes. And I think we have to distinguish the things, and especially this taxes to steer something. The more liberal position is now the state shouldn't steer, but I think it's wrong. Yes, you have to steer something, but you have to think very carefully. Not every tax really has the effect we want. Therefore, we should include more generalization what we want to have, what our goal with taxes, and not too many tax proposals. We cannot overview what the effects will be.
Cedric and Mikuláš, I know we had technical, but I think Cedric is also reacting. So.
In fact, in my point of view, this kind of tax is not only about money. It's also a political matter. With taxes, you have some obligations, and in this case, you can make some overseas company be a member citizens or so on of the European level. And as we discussed earlier about prosecuting bad companies, about environment laws, in case of they have a foot on the European land, this is a kind of act to make this possible for digital companies in these digital cases, in fact. That's why for me it's not all about the money in this case.
Okay, Mikuláš, only briefly because we need to leave for the lunch. We can then maybe continue this, but yeah.
Just to reply to your concerns, I will be nasty and show it on an example of Uber. Uber is operating probably in Germany, as well as some taxi services which are operating in Germany. The taxi service is actually obliged to pay taxes in Germany, but the Uber is not under current circumstances. They somehow operate remotely from the US and paid taxes in the US, which is kind of weird because they facilitate contracts between German customers and German taxi drivers, kind of. Yeah. So, at this point, there is obviously the internet somehow, or the internet platform is somehow used to, let's say, avoid taxes, and we should tackle it. Of course, it is a special patch for a special thing, but I don't think we are like steering something which should not be steered.
Okay. Thank you. So now we have to move because we have a reservation. But even for the Mumble listeners, we will briefly, I think like 15 minutes, continue this debate after the lunch, and we'll be back at like 15:15 or something like that, I think. So yeah, stay tuned.
I think That's absolutely right. Like we have to look into that field because if we don't, then we can end up really, really bad. Because that's a concept that is emerging. Or just it's just one of the